A small town in Nevada faces disaster. A holiday weekend, 250,000 tourists, and a 1,000-pound bomb that could explode at any second. The device cannot be disarmed. It cannot be moved without detonating.
Here we have the all clear. Stand by for
the
countdown.
FBI, it's a worst-case scenario.
In 1980, the FBI faced the largest explosive device they had ever seen. The bomb was sophisticated, carefully constructed, and designed to destroy an entire building. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. Agents and bomb experts responded from all over the country. Their mission, to disarm the deadly device and stop the dangerous extortionists who built it.
State Line, Nevada is a small tourist town straddling the border with California. The town has just 1,300 residents. The largest industry is gambling. With all that cash lying around, it makes an appealing target for criminals looking to make a big score. August 26, 1980, 5:30 a.m. at the receiving entrance of Harvey's Casino. Two men tell security they're delivering a new copy machine. The security guard gives them directions to the executive offices on the second floor. He has no idea what he has let in the building. This is no copier. Shortly after 6 a.m., a security guard making rounds notices something unusual. The door to the executive office is jammed. It looks like the lock has been glued shut. He manages to get the door open. The guard notices a bizarre-looking metal box in the middle of the room. On the floor, he finds a letter. According to the letter, the metal box contains a massive bomb. The guard contacts the Douglas County Sheriff's Department. Captain Ron Perini.
It was about 6:30 in the morning, and I received a call from one of my sergeants who told me that they had found a device at Harvey's Casino.
Perini calls in the Tahoe Douglas bomb squad. The device is huge and made of metal. According to the letter, it contains 1,000 pounds of TNT. That much TNT could blow up everything within 500 feet of the casino. The letter also says the bomb has 3 separate timers, each set for different explosion times. The device cannot be moved. It cannot be disarmed. Unless authorities come up with $3 million in cash, the bomber threatens to blow up Harvey's Casino. He also threatens that if the FBI thwarts this plan, then the bomber will strike the same hotel again.
Yeah, this thing was big, and if it was real, and it did go off at that time, none of us would be alive.
The complexity of the design and amount of TNT tells law enforcement this bomber means business. This device could blow up the entire block, and the police don't even know when it is set to go off. The bomber is holding all the cards.
There was no indication from the bomb squad members that this was a false bomb, that it was just a shell. They felt it was very real. So there was a lot of issues going on at one time. How are we going to secure this? How are we going to provide the safety for everyone?
The casino is packed with gamblers. The hotel is full of guests. With a bomb that size, police have to get the hundreds of innocent people to safety. Over the next several hours, 600 hotel guests are moved to a nearby high school.
And it's scary, to tell you the truth. It's very scary. If this bomb would have gone off in that casino, we would have lost 600 people.
As the guests are being evacuated, Captain Perini assesses the situation and determines he needs help.
We're a relatively small department. We certainly don't have the expertise as some agencies may have in dealing with extortions and the resources and the money and all the things that go with that to do a proper investigation. So because it was an extortion, we called the F.B.I. immediately.
Special Agent Bill Junkie.
We typically have extortion attempts at the casino, the state line. We've had those before. We've had plenty of small bombs placed here and there in various casinos.
At this time, the FBI was receiving nearly 100 extortion threats a year against casinos, but they were seldom this serious.
But I never, in my wildest dreams, envisioned a bomb of this size and this complexity.
There are 28 toggle switches on the top box. Each one is numbered.
They were all in the same position, in a downward position, except for one toggle switch, which was numbered 23. That was in the up position. We didn't know when we looked at those toggle switches, of course, what they went to, what they were for.
Any one of the switches could deactivate the bomb or detonate it.
They gave me a letter, which turned out to be an extortion letter, that identified various components of that bomb. And reading that letter, I realized we had a big problem here. The letter indicated to us that there was 1,000 pounds of TNT in this bomb. And judging from the size of the large box, I think it was pretty consistent that 1,000 pounds of TNT could fit into that larger box.
1,000 pounds of TNT has a huge blast radius, enough to destroy more than one casino. That would devastate this small town.
We blocked off the casino corridor area on US 50, made sure no vehicles could go through. We told the other casinos to vacate the immediate area near Harvey's, and they did that. They even boarded up some of the windows to make sure that if there was an explosion, that would cause the glass to break and hurt others.
As the sheriff's department closes down the streets, the bomb squad works on the device. The crew does not wear their bulky bomb suits because nothing could protect them if a bomb this size detonated. First, they want to know exactly what's inside the metal casing.
What kind of bomb is it? How big of an explosion is it going to be? Is it going to affect the businesses across the street? Or how far will it go? Is there chemicals involved? Is there even nuclear stuff?
Herb Hawkins is the assistant special agent in charge of the FBI's Las Vegas field office.
Well, the device was X-rayed in parts because no X-ray machine was that big. So about a third of the device was X-rayed, then another third, then another third.
In all, the bomb squad takes over 200 X-rays. They also photograph the device and dust for fingerprints. Getting paint samples is much riskier, but for the FBI, it could be an important clue to identifying the bomber.
Ultimately, we may find a guy who's got that kind of paint in his garage.
Investigators also find a small drop of blood on one corner of the device. It is collected as potential evidence.
We may be able to find a guy whose blood matches that which was taken off the bomb. That's a good investigative lead for us.
The latent fingerprints, paint, and blood samples are sent to the FBI lab in Washington, D.C. In the lab, technicians will analyze the evidence in the hopes it will lead them to the bomber. But for the agents on the scene, the first priority is to disarm this bomb. In the command post, Investigators study the X-rays of the device.
The bottom 3/4 of this lower box was very high density. The X-rays couldn't penetrate it. That told us, in essence, that it was explosive in there, or some kind of material in there filling that bottom box. We could see wires from the top box going into that material in the bottom box. We presume those were wires from the detonators, from the blasting caps, into that explosive material.
Scientists from NEST, the Nuclear Emergency Search Team, analyzed the bottom portion of the bomb to calculate the potential blast radius.
They estimated that we were looking at about a 1,500 to 2,500 foot blast area where damage could be somewhat significant. And of course, inside of 800 yards, we're looking at more than severe damage, and of course, total destruction within 200-meter radius.
We realized this guy knew what he was doing, that it was going to be an extremely difficult bomb to defeat, if it could be defeated at all.
Agents are in an impossible position, but they must find a way to disarm this bomb, and fast, before anyone gets hurt. In State Line, Nevada, extortionists plant a massive bomb in a crowded casino. The bombers demand $3 million, or they will detonate the device. Within hours of the discovery of the bomb, investigators from all over the area arrive in State Line. Sheriffs from Douglas County, police from South Lake Tahoe, as well as El Dorado County. Special Agent Bill Jonke.
They started just flooding in because they knew we would have a lot of work to do. We began bringing in F.B.I. agents from surrounding districts almost immediately.
As bomb experts work on the device, agents go after the extortionists.
We needed every patron in that casino to be interviewed with the chance that maybe they had seen something, a vehicle being involved in the delivery of this bomb, something.
Authorities set up toll-free hotlines. Captain Ron Perini and the Douglas County Sheriff's Department work closely with the FBI.
We want to know if there's any witnesses, if anybody saw these people bring the device into the casino. What about vehicles, descriptions?
The FBI questions the security guard. He tells them about seeing two men delivering a copy machine around 5:30 a.m. They were driving a white van.
We knew that we may have a white van involved in this. We knew by then exactly what time that bomb came through the casino. We knew we had two people pushing and pulling that device.
Investigators try to locate all the white vans in the Lake Tahoe area.
Law enforcement officers were stopping these vans and finding out who the operators were.
While agents on the street search for possible suspects, technicians continue to analyze the device. But the news is not good. This bomb is formidable.
On that first day after the diagnostic work, the X-rays, the interpretation of that extortion letter, we realized that we weren't going to move that bomb. That we, in fact, had a viable, functioning, live explosive device. We didn't know what the explosive inside was. We also figured we had explosives in that top box that made any sort of render-safe procedure extremely, extremely difficult. By late afternoon, we decided that we were not going to penetrate this bomb with any equipment that we had or that was developed anywhere in the country.
It appears the bomber has won. The FBI must take a new approach. They're going to have to cooperate. That evening, agents meet with Harvey Gross, the owner of Harvey's Casino.
We thought we might have a very good opportunity to arrest, to identify the people involved in this crime through the delivery of the money. So we wanted to comply with the instructions.
The bomber wants $3 million delivered to a remote location via helicopter. In exchange, authorities will receive instructions on how to move the bomb and detonate it safely.
We told them the problems we were having with this bomb, and we had a window there that was closing as far as getting the money together or deciding what we were going to do.
Agents feel that $3 million in cash is the fastest way to find him. The casino owner is skeptical.
And he said to us, "What are you going to try and do with this person?" And we said, "We are going to try and catch him." And he said, "Well, if you're going to do that, I'm not giving him $3 million. So he gave us $5,000, which we appropriately marked, and the rest was cut up paper.
An FBI pilot will fly the helicopter. Since the bomber has forbidden any radio contact, the pilot will wear a wire. He must land at a designated spot at South Lake Tahoe Airport no later than 11 p.m. At 12:05, he will receive further instructions.
He specified that no law enforcement be involved in this operation whatsoever. Well, that was pretty unrealistic. We, of course, had numerous law enforcement people stationed and concealed throughout that airport in an effort to identify anyone that could be seen near that airport that might be linked to this extortion attempt.
The pilot lands at South Lake Tahoe Airport at exactly 11 o'clock. In a nearby building, a team of FBI agents and police monitor the pilot's wire.
We were waiting for contact from the bomber. And at 12:05, just as he said, the telephone rang in the telephone booth.
Okay.
The caller instructs the pilot to look under the shelf of the phone booth. There he will find further instructions.
Follow Highway 50 to the west, the right-hand side, and a straight line.
He read that note aloud as he stood there outside the phone booth. That allowed us to hear and to know what that letter contained, and we immediately dispatched ground units in the direction that he was told to fly.
The pilot is instructed to fly west along Highway 50 at an altitude of 500 feet. At some point, he will see a strobe light where he is to land.
Not much altitude in the mountains like that. Very, very low, very, very hazardous for a helicopter to be that low at midnight. We were going to do the best we could to provide ground coverage for the protection of our pilot, and also obviously to arrest, to apprehend this perpetrator if that was at all possible. So immediately we had cars traveling westbound on Highway 50 for the sole purpose of either one, encountering the subject or the suspect in this case, or two, ensuring the safety of our pilot.
A SWAT team flying 1,000 feet above the FBI helicopter will provide added security.
The thing that always makes you more apprehensive is the unknown. We didn't know who you were dealing with. We didn't know if we had 10 people, one person, 2 dozen that were going to meet that airplane.
The FBI pilot flies west, following Route 50. He maintains an altitude of exactly 500 feet as he searches for the strobe light.
That wire, I just fought.
There is nothing but darkness below. It seems the bomber is playing some sort of deadly game, and the FBI is at his mercy. State Line, Nevada, 1980. An FBI helicopter searches a 15-mile stretch of Highway 50 for a signal from below. The extortionist who planted a massive bomb in a local casino has demanded $3 million. Agents know that appearing to comply is their best hope for arresting the bomb maker. The pilot flies through the mountains in the dark at an altitude of only 500 feet. He sees no signal from below. Assistant Special Agent in charge Herb Hawkins controls the search operation from the ground.
He came back, he flew it again. And he flew it again. We kept sending him back down the route.
We're looking where we can go. We got trees and wires down here, right?
Then after he got through with his 15 miles, we put him at 250, 300 feet, which he was scared to death. This was an experienced Marine helicopter pilot who joined the FBI. And he's flying treetops, trying to comply with and make this successful. And he keeps calling me, Herb, I got nothing. I have nothing. Everything's quiet, you know. And so I said, okay. Then at 4 o'clock, we brought him back.
Stand by.
It seems the bomber has won again. All the FBI's attempts to establish contact with him have failed. If he doesn't want the money, what does he want? Agents turn to their only other lead, the airport telephone booth where the bomber left instructions for the pilot. Special Agent Bill Jonke.
We, of course, examined that telephone booth for latent fingerprints, and we interviewed a few people, but we basically came up with nothing. Nobody had seen anything at that airport that was suspicious in nature. So that was a dead end. We had not established contact with the extortionist. And that was of grave concern to us because we needed more communication.
The next morning, the FBI asks Governor Robert List of Nevada to hold a press conference. He needs to convince the bomber to reestablish contact.
This request is made due to a failure of enlightenment and a confusion in following the previous directions. The hotel is prepared to comply and is standing by as before.
We had basically silence on Wednesday. I think that the people were too cautious to make another contact.
For the Tahoe Douglas bomb squad, it's a potentially deadly dilemma. How can they move the bomb without knowing what's inside?
It was very heavy. It was made of steel, and it was loaded with up to 1,000 pounds of explosive. We couldn't just pick it up and carry it out of there. We realized to even move it, even if we had a safe way to move it, would require 3 to 4 people. That's way too many to have anywhere near a device that could explode.
Even if they can move the device to the parking lot, then what?
We, in essence, have a giant hand grenade here. If it exploded, it would send steel shrapnel all over the place. We really couldn't afford to have it outside.
Agents and bomb experts do not know if the massive bomb is set on a timer, if the extortionist can set the bomb off remotely, or exactly how volatile the explosive material inside is. They have some hard decisions to make. One member of the team makes a radical suggestion.
Our experts told us, and we all agreed, that if we could explosively separate this top box, knock it off the bottom box at a very, very fast speed with explosives, we could defeat the electrical current from the battery that was being generated and maybe avoid a detonation of the main charge.
The plan is to use 6 pounds of plastic explosives to destroy the top box. In essence, the bomb's brain.
If they could sever that pulse from actually going down to the dynamite, it may not go off.
Everything depends on whether or not the top box is also rigged with explosives.
If the top box contained dynamite, then our explosive separation would fail because, in essence, the bomb would, what we call, sympathetically detonate. In other words, the explosion from our attempt to remove the top box would detonate all the explosives in the bomb.
It's a risky procedure. The entire casino could be destroyed. They need permission from hotel owner Harvey Gross.
And what he did say was, as long as nobody gets hurt, we can't keep doing what we're doing. We're going on for hours and hours and hours, and nobody can come up with a solution other than that, then that's okay. There was tears in his eyes, and he basically was giving us a directive that you take care of everyone here. Make sure nobody's harmed. I don't want anybody hurt. If the device does go off and it destroys a casino, we can rebuild it.
The bomb squad sets up a linear-shaped charge, positioning the explosives to destroy the top box.
Wires were run from the explosive charge to a window outside and eventually to a firing point out in the parking lot.
There is no way to know whether the shaped charge will successfully disable the bomb or detonate it.
We hoped that we would separate that top box and that there were in fact no explosives in there and we'd have no detonation. But we were fully prepared, and I have to say we expected detonation of up to 1,000 pounds of TNT, as the letter had indicated. So we were prepared for that when we fired that shape charge.
At 3:55 p.m., Sheriff Jerry Maple broadcasts a warning. The disarming attempt is about to begin.
Okay, we have the all clear. Everybody stand by. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
In a casino in Nevada, FBI agents face the biggest bomb they've ever seen. A device packed with 1,000 pounds of explosives. Their only option, blow the control box off the top of the bomb with a small explosive charge.
All you to stand by for countdown, please.
Special Agent Bill Jonke watches from the roof of a nearby casino.
We had high-speed cameras prepared for the detonation. We were watching. We were keeping our fingers crossed. We, of course, could hear over the radio literally the countdown.
4, 3, 2, 1.
The plan has failed. Part of the casino has been reduced to rubble. Assistant Special Agent in Charge Herb Hawkins.
We had a major mess on our hands. We had a hotel that had been blown downward 2 stories, blown upward 2 stories. Numerous pieces of device, rebar, concrete, chips, wall, desks, furniture, all mashed up, and in some of it in the hotel, down in the hole. Some of it up on the 2nd and 3rd floor, and a bunch of it out in the parking lot.
All of us probably had the same thought. We were thankful that we had not a single person with as much as a scratch. Nobody was hurt. We felt relief that the bomb in essence was gone. There was not a danger from that bomb anymore. Having to go back up on it for a day or two was getting stressful for everybody. So we felt a relief when that thing went off. If you destroy or damage a building, that can be rebuilt. But loss of human life or casualties is something that can never be healed. Myself and a few of the bomb technicians went into that building right away, right after detonation. However, it was pretty dangerous.
Rubble is everywhere, and the FBI is concerned the rest of the building might collapse. Once it is secured, agents go back into the casino to search for clues.
We commenced a very thorough crime scene investigation, as you would have to do in a bombing case, as your crime scene is really the key to helping you solve the puzzle.
But in this devastation, finding those clues will not be easy.
When a bomb goes off, the components just don't evaporate. They become much smaller and obviously disfigured, but they're there. They're there in the rubble. They're there in the crater at the bottom. They're there. Our job is to find them and identify them as components of the bomb.
Authorities estimate it could take nearly 6 weeks to process the crime scene. The FBI can't afford to give the bomber that much time to cover his tracks. Within days of the explosion, the state-line casinos offer a $250,000 reward for the arrest and conviction of the extortionists.
We hit every news media outlet with that information in hopes of somebody calling. We generated and started a hotline, a 1-800 hotline, so that anybody in the country could call us toll-free and provide information for this reward.
The offer of a large reward brings thousands of leads, but no solid information.
Several days went by, I'd say 7, 8, 9, 10 days, and we got leads from this offer, but we didn't get what we considered to be viable leads from this. The group that was responsible for building and placing this bomb was probably very close-knit, maybe even a family, because we weren't getting any information.
Agents hope that in the rubble they will find one piece of evidence that will lead them to the bomber.
At the end of the 40 days, we'd recovered approximately 108 pounds of a bomb that we felt probably weighed around 800 pounds. So we recovered about an eighth of it. The items that we recovered primarily were heavy steel items that survived the blast.
As each piece of the bomb is recovered, it is shipped to the FBI laboratory in Washington, D.C. This is the first opportunity the agents have to really study the bomb.
We were able to determine the type of switches that were used, the mercury switches, the type of explosive, pieces of cardboard box, things that would point where and how the device was constructed.
Laboratory analysis tells agents a lot about the bomb and something about the bomber.
One of the early things that we did was have the metallurgist look at the bomb components we were recovering and determine the stresses on those pieces of metal from a metallurgical point of view to tell us what forces were exerted against them in the blast. And by doing that, we could put a family of explosives into this. And while the threat letter said it was TNT, we're not about to take that on face value. We want to know that the damage was consistent with an explosive like TNT, which it was not. So right away we know something about the bomber. He didn't tell the truth in the letter. He was trying to tell us something that would get your attention.
The bomber used dynamite instead of TNT. Because TNT is more powerful, he probably mentioned it to intimidate investigators.
It was a very complex scheme, and therefore, when you looked at the device, a complex mind had to have put this together. A very painstaking, patient individual. This was not built in a day. This was a device that looked like it had taken weeks, if not months, to build. And to build it without drawing attention probably required even more time.
To try and learn more about the bomber, agents asked for assistance from FBI profilers at the Behavioral Science Unit then housed at the FBI complex at Quantico. Profilers determined the bomber is probably a male, in his late 30s or early 40s, with some sort of bomb-making experience. Based on the complexity of the device and the letter, they feel the bomber is egocentric. He believes he can outsmart investigators.
And the bombing profile is extremely difficult. It's not like a murder where the guy leaves certain fingerprints at the scene. Bombing is a lot more complex. Personal, when you shoot somebody, it's more impersonal when you build a bomb and you put it under his car and turn around and walk away. You don't have to sit there and watch.
He doesn't like to get close to his victims. The agents also suspect something other than money motivates this bomber.
Is this a terrorist act? And what's the goal of this particular act? Is it to just make money? Are these people involved with narcotics and drugs? Do we have organized crime, the mafia? We did not believe that organized crime would try and pull this type of thing. We didn't think the druggers would try and pull this type of thing. They like to remain off the skyline.
Investigators are running out of leads, and the bombers seem poised to strike again. In Reno, 40 miles north, 4 more casinos received bomb threats. In State Line, Nevada, the FBI searches for a dangerous extortionist. He's already blown up one casino, and in his extortion note, he threatened to do it again. The FBI fears the bomber is simply toying with them. In Reno, 40 miles north, 4 more casinos received bomb threats. Investigators search the casinos, but no bombs are found. Further investigation reveals these threats aren't connected to the Harvey's bombing. Agents again appeal to the public for help. They distribute descriptions of the suspects based on the security guards' recollections. Assistant Special Agent in Charge Herb Hawkins.
We were bombarded with thousands upon thousands of phone calls.
In early September, agents receive an intriguing tip. 3 former employees of a jet aircraft plant moved to Reno just before the casino bombing. According to the FBI lab in Washington, some of the electronic components used in the bomb resemble aircraft parts. Aircraft engineers could have the technical savvy to put together a device like this. Special Agent Bill Junkie.
They fit our profile, if you will, of being a group. They had access, they had experience in explosive work. They looked pretty darn good. And we spent a lot of investigative man-hours looking into these people and covering the leads from this group that extended nationwide. We focused on this group with a lot of our resources for 2 to 3 weeks before we were finally able to eliminate them as suspects.
It's one of many dead ends, and the bomber has gone strangely silent. Desperate for leads, investigators review every phone tip they have received since the bombing. Assistant Special Agent in Charge Herb Hawkins wades through thousands of memos. On October 1st, a small tip catches his eye. A motel owner saw a white van leaving her motel in South Lake Tahoe an hour before the bomb was delivered. From witness statements, the FBI knows that the bomb was delivered in a white van. Hawkins thinks it's too close to be a coincidence.
When I picked that memo up, first it came in on the 800 line and no one looked at it. It's now a month old. And a suspicious vehicle leaving at 4:30 in the morning in a van needs to be covered.
Agents interview the motel owner who called in the tip. On August 26th at 4 a.m., she heard strange noises in the parking lot of the motel.
She awoke and went to a window and saw 2 to 3 individuals in white overalls trying to start a white van. She copied down the license number to ensure that it was the same license number on the registration card.
The next day, she called the FBI hotline. Agents learn the name on the hotel registration card is fake. They run the license plate number of the white van through the California Department of Motor Vehicles.
The information that came back from the DMV check on that license plate was that the vehicle was registered to a Mr. John Burgess, who was a resident of Clovis, California, which is right down by Fresno. Immediately, agents in the Fresno office went to pay a visit to Mr. Burgess and see why that van of his was up at Lake Tahoe and was being occupied by 3 people who appeared to be suspicious.
Burgess tells agents he doesn't know what they're talking about. He owns a white van, but his son usually drives it.
We were unable to gather very much information from Mr. Burgess other than the fact that his son had the vehicle and that his son might be involved in growing marijuana.
Agents interview Burgess's son in Fresno. They ask him what he was doing in Tahoe at 4 o'clock in the morning and why he used a fake name on his registration.
The young man told the investigators that he was up at Lake Tahoe looking for a place to grow marijuana. These agents realized that Lake Tahoe is at an elevation of 6,200 feet plus. It is not conducive whatsoever to growing marijuana because of the climatic conditions. So that was a pretty lame excuse.
Agents suspect Burgess's son is lying, but they don't know why. They don't think he's the bomber. At 18, they feel he's too young to construct a bomb this complex. Agents move on, searching for more viable leads.
The investigation into this bombing wore on and on and on. We interviewed well over 400 people, suspects in this bombing, throughout the country.
The bomb caused $3 million in damage. The people behind this must be stopped before they build another bomb. But agents are running out of leads. They have not heard from the bomber in months. By November, all but 16 agents are called home. The investigation is stalling. The FBI tries a new approach.
In the early part of 1981, we decided that we needed to up the ante for the reward. The reward was then increased to $500,000, from $250,000 to $500,000.
If a tight-knit group is responsible for the casino bombing, the FBI is betting that $500,000 in cash should be enough money to tear it apart.
We got our $500,000, and we got the news media, asked them to put this out. We had a small news conference, and it was prolific.
The FBI's gamble pays off.
And it wasn't but a very short time, maybe a few days, that our phone call came in. A young man called the Fresno office of the FBI and told them that we had been close, but we weren't on the right guy. He told us that it was not the young son of Mr. Burgess that we should be looking at, that it was in fact John Burgess Sr. himself who was responsible for this.
The tip makes sense. Although John Burgess didn't appear to be a likely suspect, agents have never resolved why his son was in the Tahoe area when the bomb was delivered. Within days, the entire investigation is moved from State Line, Nevada to Fresno, California.
There was already a resident agency there, but we established another office there, and we brought in another 30, 40 agents to Fresno to begin our focus on John Burgess. I personally believe that this was our guy. There was a family situation involved. He had two sons who could have helped him and would not have participated in the reward. They would have kept their mouths shut like we expected. And I moved down to Fresno with great anticipation. I thought, this is it.
The FBI suspects John Burgess Sr. is the casino bomber, but they still need evidence linking him to the crime before they can make an arrest. A major casino lies in ruins, decimated by a massive bomb. The FBI suspects that John Burgess, a Fresno landscaping contractor, is the mastermind behind the devastating bomb. Special Agent Bill Jonke.
Our investigation of John Burgess Sr. included everything we can think of. We talked and interviewed his relatives, his friends. We surveilled him day and night. We checked his background. We checked people who had worked for him.
Burgess has an interesting past, according to Special Agent Herb Hawkins.
He was a Hungarian immigrant who had run afoul of the Soviets during the Hungarian Revolution. He went to a slave labor camp, exiled by the Soviets to that area, and had a great amount of work with explosives.
Through interviews, agents learn that Burgess is in financial trouble. In March 1980, the IRS filed suit against him for $34,000 in back taxes. He also owes Harvey's casino $15,000 in unpaid gambling markers.
His gaming losses that he told us about and that we had verified through records beforehand only led to make him a stronger suspect, because we always felt that whoever did this had a grudge against Harvey's casino, probably owed him money or had lost money, so it really fit perfectly into our bomber profile.
Agents feel John Burgess has the skill and the motive to bomb Harvey's casino. Now they need to prove it.
Myself and another agent were assigned to contact Mr. Burgess every single day, 7 days a week. Just pay a visit to him and talk to him, get him to talk. Some days he'd yell and scream at us and wouldn't let us in. Other days he'd let us in and talk to us.
Burgess is very egotistical. He likes to talk about his successful landscaping business and his skill in electronics. The profilers were correct.
Things started to fall into place in terms of background. Now we needed to find out, there in Fresno, did he build a device there, and where did he buy the stuff to do this?
You have a bombing, one of the first things you do is you start looking around for thefts. Where could this stuff have come from? They could make it themselves, they could import it, they could steal it, they could buy it. You go to the ATF and pull all the theft reports.
Agents learned that 1,000 pounds of dynamite was stolen from a construction site near Burgess's home prior to the casino bombing.
So the puzzle started to come together, and it was time that we got people to start talking to us from inside the family.
Agents interview a member of Burgess's extended family who owns a large turkey farm near Fresno. They're particularly interested in the switches on a feeding mechanism Burgess constructed for the farm.
It was identical to the construction of the bomb. It was the same type of plastic material that he used, the same kind of soldering that he used.
Agents turn up the pressure on Burgess's sons and finally persuade them to talk.
Both kids in general told us the same story, that initially their father had asked them to participate in this extortion attempt. Both kids were not anxious to do it. They didn't want to do it, but they had loyalty to their father. And they at times provided some labor.
Burgess's son admits he did not grow marijuana. He made up the story to protect his father. The FBI learns that 2 employees in Burgess's landscaping business were the men who delivered the bomb to Harvey's casino. Burgess's sons say their father's girlfriend helped write the extortion letter. And they lead authorities to the place where their father hid the remainder of the stolen dynamite.
They also provided us with information about an additional explosives theft that occurred at basically the same site. And they told us where this explosive was buried. 600 pounds worth of dynamite was buried in a dry creek bed outside of Fresno. Mr. Burgess had told the boys he planned to build another bomb and put it somewhere else.
On August 16, 1981, John Burgess is arrested as he tries to leave his home. Burgess and his co-conspirators are charged with commercial extortion and conspiracy. Burgess's sons plead guilty to conspiracy and are sentenced to probation. On April 15, 1985, John Burgess is convicted and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. The FBI lost a building, but the operation was a success. No one lost their lives, and the FBI captured the bomber before he could strike again.
So we learned a lot about processing large building bombing. What you have to do first, second, and third, where the pitfalls are, where the dangers are. Now, unfortunately, since then, all around the globe, we've had opportunities to practice the lessons and refine the lessons that we learned there.
In Puerto Rico, violent militants murder a policeman, then turn their guns on a busload of unarmed Navy workers and open fire on American sailors in the street. These ruthless killers have vowed to fight to the death. And the FBI must use every tactic at their disposal to track down the terrorists and end this rebellion in paradise.
band of extremists waged a guerrilla war against the United States. Their goal, to make the island an independent nation or die trying. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. In 1983, the investigation became personal for agents when terrorists attacked their offices in San Juan. For the FBI, catching the perpetrators would depend on skill, patience, and turning a handful of small clues into one big break.
The Caribbean island of Puerto Rico is home to 3 million American citizens and a handful of anti-American terrorists. On August 24th, 1978, 2 Puerto Rican patrolmen encounter what appears to be a stranded couple. They stop to help. Suddenly, 3 heavily armed men rush them. One patrolman tries to draw his gun, but he's immediately shot and killed. The other patrolman surrenders. The attackers force him into the woods and order him to remove his uniform. Then bind him to a tree with his own handcuffs. Back at the road, the couple attempts to disguise the patrol car so they can drive it to a hiding place. But before they can finish, headlights approach. The man holds up the dead officer's badge. He tells the men in the car to move along, it's a police matter. But the men in the car identify themselves as undercover cops and offer to help. The man urges them to leave. Instead, they grow suspicious. At a safe distance, the cops pull off and radio for backup. They arm themselves and head back to take on their attackers. But when the cops arrive, they see no one. Wary of an ambush, they secure the crime scene. After searching the area, they rescue the handcuffed patrolman and find his partner's body. 5 days later, a previously unknown terror group claims credit for the assault. Since the attack was claimed by a terrorist organization, the investigation falls under the jurisdiction of the FBI. At the federal building in San Juan, agents study the group's letter to the media, which includes diagrams allegedly showing what occurred. The group claims the patrolman overreacted, forcing them to kill him in self-defense. FBI Special Agent Rick Hahn.
We thought it was very odd that they claimed credit for this incident, particularly since a police officer was killed. But the communique was detailed and in fact included a graphic drawing of the events as they claimed that they had occurred. And I think that they felt like they had to justify the fact that the officer had been killed.
This new terror group calls themselves the People's Puerto Rican Army, or EPB in Spanish. Their stated goal is to turn the U.S. Commonwealth into an independent communist country, which is contrary to what the vast majority of Puerto Ricans want.
Those who wanted total independence were less than 5% of the island. So the representative numbers amongst the population that are in sync with the terrorists is a very small handful of people.
The letterhead includes the group's nickname, Macheteros.
Macheteros actually comes from the machete workers, the blue-collar people, basically, of the island, who they're claiming to represent. I think that they chose that name primarily to identify themselves with the unskilled laborers, the workers of Puerto Rico, the native people who would have been subjugated into things like chopping sugarcane.
Agent Hahn reviews the evidence so far. Police recovered empty 9mm shells, but no useful fingerprints or fibers. Sketches of the suspects proved to be too general to be of much use. With no real leads to go on, the FBI decides to watch several militants who preach violence, hoping they will lead them to the Macheteros. The police take a different approach, encouraging informants to infiltrate militant groups.
The police of Puerto Rico, having lost one of their own, are extremely focused on trying to resolve this. And they are recruiting young people and putting them into what they consider to be radical organizations on college campuses to try and ferret out who may be part of the Macheteros.
2 months pass as the FBI and police continue to search for leads. Then, in October 1979, the Macheteros strike again. At the U.S. Customs building in San Juan, a high-powered bomb explodes. Fortunately, no one is injured.
The symbolism of the custom house is that it represents the U.S. government's presence there in Puerto Rico. Everything that comes imported into the island comes through the customs house.
In a letter to the media, the Macheteros take credit. In response, the FBI and police intensify their efforts. A month and a half later, at the Sabana Seca Navy base near San Juan, 18 unarmed Navy personnel ride a bus on a routine trip to work. A vehicle stops ahead, blocking their path. A van pulls out and begins firing on the bus with automatic weapons.
They fired right along the black band on a typical school bus, which is right about where the floor level is, so that even individuals that would be hiding on the floor to try and get cover would have taken rounds through the side of the bus.
The attack kills 2 people and wounds 9. Agent Hahn coordinates the investigation.
This attack was so audacious and so brutal that it clearly upped the ante in terms of what the terrorists were willing to do to the government personnel on the island. This was the first out-and-out planned homicide, and that's clearly what this was. So it clearly upped the ante.
Agents collect shell casings. They run the VIN number on the abandoned vehicle and find that it was stolen months earlier. They also check for fingerprints and fibers, but find none. The attackers have left no clues. The media receives a letter from the Macheteros proudly claiming credit. At the FBI lab in San Juan, technicians study the shell casings from the Navy bus shooting. They determined that the majority came from a .45 caliber Thompson submachine gun. The others came from a .223 caliber rifle. Technicians compare the unique markings on the shells to those used in other crimes, but can't find a match. Once again, agents have no real leads. Determined to track down the Macheteros, the FBI brings in dozens of additional agents from the mainland. The additional manpower makes it possible to put intense surveillance on militants believed to be linked to the Macheteros.
It's only by watching them, watching their activities, and determining exactly what they're up to on a daily basis that we're going to be able to ferret out who's really a terrorist and who's somebody that's just talking.
While the FBI tries to find the Macheteros have already begun targeting the FBI. In Puerto Rico, a terror group known as the Macheteros murder a policeman and attack a bus full of unarmed Navy workers, killing 2 and wounding 9. With no real leads, the FBI takes a different approach. They decide to follow the money and try to determine how the terrorists get their funding. They spot a potential lead. A recent wave of armored car robberies. The highly organized robbers carry high-powered weapons, grab the money, and flee. The robbers leave behind no evidence. FBI Special Agent Fernando Candelario.
Abandoned vehicles that were recovered, we would trace to a name which turned out to be a fictitious name, and then it just got to a dead end.
Agents suspect that the Macheteros committed the robberies, but the crimes themselves provide no new leads. A month later, the Macheteros send a letter to the media claiming credit for a single $300,000 heist, though the FBI suspects they have committed many more. Through informants, the FBI begins hearing rumors that the Macheteros are led by a major Puerto Rican terrorist, Filiberto Ojeda. During the 1960s, Ojeda trained in Cuba as a communist agent. He returned to Puerto Rico and was arrested in 1970 for bombing tourist hotels, but he jumped bail and went into hiding. The FBI has been looking for him for the past 10 years. FBI Special Agent Rick Hahn.
He was the sort of individual who we thought was very capable of putting together an organization like the Macheteros.
If Ojeda leads the Macheteros, it helps explain their deadly discipline. The FBI increases its surveillance of militants suspected of having contact with Ojeda. 8 months later, while en route to a surveillance assignment, Agent Candelario hears on the radio that jet fighters have exploded at the Puerto Rican Air National Guard base. He heads straight for the base and is shocked by what he sees.
It looked like a war zone. Some of the agents that were Vietnam veterans were telling me how this reminded them of a combat zone.
The explosions destroyed 9 fighter jets and disabled 2 more. The damage is estimated at $45 million. Miraculously, no one was injured in the attack. Agents search the airbase for evidence. They find a machete painted with the letters EPB, an abbreviation of the formal name of the Macheteros. Agents believe the group left it behind as a calling card to taunt the FBI. Investigators determined that pipe bombs were placed in the jet's air intakes, exhaust pipes, and landing gear. They study pieces of the bombs but gain no new leads.
We interviewed every member of the Air National Guard to determine if this was an inside job.
But the investigators conclude that no one from the base was aiding the Macheteros. For agents, it is another dead end.
For many, many years, we've just collected a lot of evidence on the Macheteros, but we could not penetrate that organization.
Days later, sailors from the USS Pensacola take in the tourist attractions of San Juan, just as they're about to cross a bridge. Bullets rip through all 4 sailors. 1 is killed and 3 seriously injured. In a phone call to a radio station, the Macheteros take credit.
When I arrived to the scene, the young soldier or sailor was still laying there. My first reaction is, is thinking about the parents of that young sailor. He's here in Puerto Rico, he's unarmed, has nothing to do with the political situation in Puerto Rico, but he's a U.S. military, and that's the targets that the Macheteros selected. And it was just a tragic situation.
At the FBI lab, a technician examines the unique ejector marks on the empty shells.
It was determined that the weapon that was used was the .45 caliber machine gun that was used in Sabana Seca.
Agents have connected the weapon to at least 2 attacks, but are no closer to identifying members of the Macheteros. Devil's Night, the evening before Halloween. At 7:45 p.m., an event occurs that forever changes the FBI's attitude toward the Macheteros. A huge explosion rocks the FBI's office. FBI Special Agent Jose Rodriguez.
The explosion was so loud that they suspected that it was a bomb inside the building. Because I was a bomb technician, I was one of the first people called.
Surveying the scene, Agent Rodriguez notices that the window glass has been blown in, not out. That means that the explosion must have happened outside. He searches near the building for evidence.
I started looking around, and I was able to find the rocket motor cover with the fins intact in the back parking lot.
He recognizes the object as part of an American law rocket, short for light anti-tank weapon. Agent Rodriguez discovers that the serial number is still intact, so the rocket should be traceable. A law rocket has a range of only 350 meters, so it must have been fired nearby. Agents interview everyone in the surrounding area and locate one woman who says she saw the attackers.
This lady said that this guy came into her yard. She came out the door. He told her to get back inside. He puts the law rocket on his shoulder and fires the law rocket at the building.
The witness says the man fled in an SUV, which was followed by a car. She describes both vehicles, and agents begin searching the surrounding neighborhoods. The FBI quickly finds the two suspect vehicles nearby.
People that lived in the neighborhood told us that they had seen people come dump the vehicle. One of them, the person actually gotten out of the vehicle and wiped the door, like he was trying to remove evidence of fingerprints from the door of the vehicle, which made it a very highly suspect vehicle.
Anybody else?
FBI Special Agent Marlene Hunter.
Think of anything else?
We started interviewing the people to get descriptions of the individuals that left the vehicle and just ensure that the vehicle was preserved until the agents could start processing it for evidence.
While interviewing witnesses, agents learned from the media that the Macheteros have claimed responsibility.
We took it extremely personal because it was the first time that the Macheteros had attacked the FBI specifically, and we wanted to solve that case. We wanted to charge the Macheteros.
To do that, agents must find a way to penetrate their secretive world. The Puerto Rican terrorist organization known as the Macheteros has brought their fight to the FBI's doorstep with a rocket attack on their office in San Juan. Now agents work around the clock to follow up leads. The FBI asks the U.S. Army to run a trace on the rocket serial number, according to FBI Special Agent Jose Rodriguez.
In other words, where did it come from? How did the Macheteros get an American-made law rocket? The military did an outstanding job in tracing it. However, it was told to us that they suspected that some of that lot of law rockets had been left in Vietnam once the Americans had pulled out. And in tracing that, also we found that a ship had carried a large load of American-made weapons from North Vietnam to Cuba at one time. And we suspected that possibly that rocket had have gone to Cuba, and then the Macheteros had obtained it from there.
In the FBI garage, agents processed the two vehicles believed used in the rocket attack. The vehicle identification and license plate numbers lead nowhere, and there are no obvious fingerprints. Agents look for evidence lost in crevices or fingerprints left while doing repairs. FBI Special Agent Fernando Candelario.
We decided that we're going to do this, and we're going to make sure that we get any piece of evidence that we can off that vehicle.
Under a door paneling, agents find a single fingerprint.
It's clear. Yeah. It's a good one.
FBI Special Agent Marlene Hunter.
The fact that you were able to lift a print off of a getaway vehicle was very exciting. It was a great break.
The FBI matches the fingerprint to known radical Abelino Gonzalez. The fingerprint alone isn't enough to convict him. The FBI considers watching him, but fears it will be a waste of manpower since they suspect he will remain low-key in the wake of the attack.
So you have to have a team of approximately 6 people, at least, in 6 different cars to be effective, and it eats up your resources. So one of the particular investigative techniques that was being discussed a lot was wiretap, electronic surveillance. But where do we go? Do we wiretap Avelino? Do we look for a better subject, et cetera, et cetera?
In the garage, agents begin taking apart the SUV, which they believe was used to transport the anti-tank rocket. Deep in a pocket in the driver's door, one agent makes a critical discovery.
Because it is so humid in Puerto Rico, if you leave paper documents, they'll become sticky and they stick to everything. In this final pocket, we found the corner of a traffic citation.
The torn bit of traffic ticket includes the entire ticket ID number.
That was a very nice stroke of luck that the portion with the number on it was preserved.
At Puerto Rico's Department of Motor Vehicles, Agent Candelario tracks down the number. He discovers that the original ticket was issued to Pedro Ramirez Cesar Almodovar for an expired inspection sticker. He writes down Almodovar's home address and gets a copy of the original license photo. Agent Candelario has spent hours watching Macheteros suspects, but he doesn't recognize the man. The photo could break the case wide open, or it could be yet another dead end. At the FBI office in San Juan, agents hunt for official records on Pedro Almodovar.
We searched everything associated with the name, birth records, we searched tax records.
Agents find one record with the same name and birth date.
It was a dead baby's birth certificate that was used to get this identification. So we knew this person didn't exist as an adult anyway.
When the name proves false, agents concentrate on the photo.
That photo was copied probably 1,000 times, sent everywhere to see if somebody could identify that person.
But agents can't find anyone who recognizes the man. Agent Rodriguez goes to the address on Almodovar's driver's license. One address leads to another, where a woman with a Cuban accent answers the door. She insists she doesn't know anyone named Pedro Almodovar.
And I took the picture out of my pocket and placed it in front of her face and said, "Do you know this individual?" And it was as if she'd seen a ghost. She almost fell back when she saw the picture and immediately said, no, I don't know that individual.
Agents are confident she isn't telling the truth.
I knew that she knew who that person was.
Back at the FBI office, investigators run the woman's name through a database of possible terrorist supporters. In a major breakthrough, the computer indicates she's related by marriage to the family of Filiberto Ojeda, the suspected leader of the Macheteros. Agents now believe that the man in the photo is actually Ojeda.
We compared the photographs of Filiberto Ojeda Rios to Pedro Almodovar. There was a resemblance. Nobody could identify him positively.
Agents decide against watching the Cuban woman. They suspect their visit has been reported to the Macheteros, who won't go near her again for months. Instead, agents decide to put intensive surveillance on Abelino Gonzalez, the radical whose fingerprint was found on the getaway car. 2 months have passed since the rocket attack, and agents believe the terrorists may feel safe to begin meeting again. The surveillance teams take great pains to avoid being detected.
The rule of thumb on that team was don't get burned. If we pick up an individual and we lose him in the first half hour, then we'll pick him up the next day.
2 weeks into the surveillance, agents watch Gonzalez drive in circles around a parking lot, apparently trying to determine if he's being followed.
They were trying to detect surveillance. It was an exciting moment. We were observing excellent tradecraft on the part of these two macheteros.
Finally, Gonzalez stops and picks up an older man.
The decision was made to drop Avelino and concentrate on the person that he was meeting to try to identify him.
Agents follow the older man to a second-story apartment an hour from San Juan. Investigators rent an apartment across the street and watch the man. They check the name on his apartment and car registration, but find out that it's false.
And we were doing surveillances on him for a few days, and he was very, very watchful for surveillance activity. He would use different public phones, and he would use different one every time he'd make a call, even in the same evening.
To identify the man, agents come up with a creative plan to obtain his fingerprints. The next time, the older man makes a phone call and leaves. An FBI agent moves in and cuts off the handset. Even if the suspect notices the cut cord, agents don't believe it will tip him off.
We have vandalism here all the time in Puerto Rico, and nobody's going to think anything of it.
FBI technicians process the payphone receiver and are able to pull fingerprints from it.
The FBI lab came back, said that the latent fingerprint that was discovered on that telephone was that of Filiberto Ojeda Rios.
The FBI has found the alleged leader of the Macheteros.
It was like Christmas come early. I mean, we had confirmed everything that we suspected, and that's when the case was designated a major case of the FBI.
Agents could arrest Ojeda on an old warrant for jumping bail. Instead, they decide to continue watching him to try to identify other members of the Macheteros. The FBI wants to take down the entire group and bring peace to this troubled island. A Puerto Rican terror group known as the Macheteros wages an unpopular war for independence, attacking local police, the American military, and the FBI. Although they claim to be freeing the country from American oppression, less than 5% of the island's population supports their cause. After months of intense surveillance of suspected members of the Macheteros, agents have identified the leader of the organization, Filiberto Ojeda, who has been a fugitive for more than a decade. The FBI continues their efforts to identify more members of the group to bring them all to justice. A month after identifying the terror leader, the FBI gets an unexpected break. At an office building in San Juan, police respond to a burglary. An entire floor of the building had been broken into. In one of the offices, authorities found some suspicious documents that appeared to belong to a terrorist group. They called the FBI. FBI agents searched through the office's filing cabinets. FBI Special Agent Marlene Hunter can't believe what they find.
Fairly quickly, it became clear that it was the central archives of the Macheteros organization. Not only their archives for historical purposes, but also records regarding future actions that they were going to take. Another interesting find were minutes of meetings that went all the way back to the date they were formed in 1976. It was a gold mine.
In a chilling moment, Agent Hunter discovers that the terrorists have compiled detailed information on individual FBI agents.
There were files with FBI names and their family members, where their children went to school.
The threatening discovery underscores the danger to agents and their families.
It really made you realize that maybe you needed to not take the same route all the time. You needed to always assume that someone could be following you.
Other documents describe the group's terrorist activities, but names for places and people are coded. The FBI takes the files as evidence and attempts to crack the codes. With the evidence collected so far, the FBI gets a judge's authorization to listen to payphones used by Filiberto Ojeda, the alleged leader of the Macheteros. As with their documents, the Macheteros also use code names when speaking on the telephone. FBI Special Agent Fernando Candelario.
We heard a lot of conversations where the codename Águila and Águila Blanca were mentioned. But in the contents of the conversation, we couldn't really tell what Águila or Águila Blanca was. Águila means eagle, and Águila Blanca is white eagle.
Agents suspect Águila refers to a person, and Águila Blanca is an operation that person conducted. Whenever Ojeda arranges to meet someone, agents follow in an effort to determine the new person's identity. If possible, agents retrieve objects the person has touched and send them to the lab to be fingerprinted. Agents use the fingerprint results, surveillances, and wiretaps to match terrorist code names to real names. Agent Hunter leads the effort.
I always liked jigsaw puzzles when I was a kid, and this was like one big jigsaw puzzle. We had multiple layers of code names that we were able to piece together through careful coordination of the physical surveillance logs with the electronic surveillance logs and independent investigation.
The FBI identifies more members of the Macheteros one by one. Agents use the new information to get authorization to put a microphone inside Ojeda's apartment. When agents see Ojeda leave one night, they enter to plant the bug. They find the interior doors partly open. Agents recognize this as a clever counter-surveillance tactic.
Their MO to protect themselves was to leave interior doors open at a certain gap, and they would measure it. And in case that door was moved by an agent inserting a microphone in that residence, they would know somebody had been in here.
Agents carefully reset each door to avoid tipping off Ojeda.
We didn't want him to move. We were afraid if he moved that we'd never find him again.
At the FBI office, Agent Hunter continues her efforts to decode a list of names and phone numbers from the Macheteros files. Agents believe the phone numbers have been encoded through a mathematical formula. If the FBI can crack that code, they will have phone numbers for all the Macheteros. Agents capture a real phone number electronically at the same time that they overhear Ojeda call the man by his code name. Agent Hunter uses the real phone number and the corresponding coded phone number to try to figure out the formula.
I was able to play around with the sequence of the numbers, and it wasn't an easy code. It wasn't, like sometimes they add 2 to everything or subtract 1 from everything.
Her determination pays off. Agent Hunter makes a breakthrough and rushes to tell the team.
I went over where they were, and I said, "You can't believe this, I just broke the telephone number code." Oh, they were thrilled. Everybody was thrilled with that. That allowed us to decode all the telephone numbers, and we could get the real number, and we could say who the real person connected to that code name was. So we were able to sort of unmask and figure this group out.
With the codes cracked and listening devices in place, the FBI overhears the Macheteros arguing over money. FBI Special Agent Jose Rodriguez.
Ojeda wanted to use the money to further the cause of the organization and to establish better relations with the Cubans in Cuba. They had sent, I think it was $2.2 million to the Cubans as a show of good faith.
Agents are puzzled by the huge amounts of money that the Macheteros seem to have.
But we got $6.8 million that the organization is quarreling over, and we wondered, where did they get this money?
Agents totaled the losses of all the recent bank robberies and armored car heists in Puerto Rico, but they don't come close to $6.8 million. Agents send an urgent bulletin to all FBI offices asking if anyone has any unsolved multi-million-dollar robberies. An answer comes from Hartford, Connecticut. A year earlier, at an armored car depot, a guard gave co-workers a knockout drug and stole $7.2 million. Agents in San Juan note that the guard in the so-called Big Sleep heist is Puerto Rican. They suspect that the Machetero operation, codenamed Águila Blanca, is really the Big Sleep heist.
We decided to pull more tapes, previously transcribed conversations where Águila and Águila Blanca were mentioned, and now with the context in mind that this could be the armored car robbery, it started to make sense. The Macheteros had committed this robbery. They hadn't claimed responsibility for it yet, though.
It no longer was just an investigation of the law rocket attack on our building. It was a group that had gone to the United States to steal $7 million, which at the time was the second largest robbery in U.S. history.
Prosecutors advised the FBI that they would prefer to try the Macheteros in Connecticut for the big sleep heist. They worry that a murder trial in Puerto Rico would fail because jurors would be too frightened.
It was going to be difficult to get a jury that would be willing to convict, assuming the evidence was right, a member of the Macheteros. The Macheteros, you mentioned that name in Puerto Rico, and it instilled fear.
The FBI decides to continue its surveillance until it gets enough evidence to convict the Macheteros of the big sleep heist. But before the FBI gets the additional evidence it needs, Ojeda suddenly disappears. Agents fear that Ojeda has somehow caught on to their surveillance. They will have to get their additional evidence elsewhere. The FBI decides to focus on another target, Ojeda's right-hand man, Juan Segarra.
Juan Segarra Palmer was a very active member of the organization, what I would call a shaker and a mover. He was the one that made things happen. He was the brains of the organization.
The FBI has a microphone inside Segarra's house, but it has gone dead. Agents watch Segarra and his family drive away and move in to repair the bug, leaving the front door unlocked. The agents fix the broken microphone and prepare to leave. Suddenly, Agent Candelario gets an urgent message.
When I am wearing an earpiece with the radio unit, and I hear the green station wagon is coming up to the residence. This is the aircraft is calling this out.
An FBI plane has spotted the vehicle of a known member of the Macheteros. He pulls up to the house and notices the unlocked door.
When we heard he was in front of the door coming in, we went to the bedrooms. Myself and another agent went into the closet. The closets had no doors.
The agents know that the Macheteros are almost always armed. They hear footsteps coming closer. If the terrorist comes into the bedroom, the confrontation could turn deadly. Agents repair a hidden microphone in the home of a suspected member of the Macheteros, Juan Segarra. But just as they finish, a terrorist enters. FBI Special Agent Fernando Candelario and another agent hide in a closet, guns ready.
It's obviously a member of the Macheteros, a dangerous terrorist organization, coming into this safe house to protect it. We don't know if he's going to come around that corner with a weapon. I'm not going to tell you that we weren't scared. We could hear him speak. He would say, "Aquí no hay nadie. Is there anybody here?" We didn't answer. And he'd go to the other door. "Aquí no hay nadie."
The terrorist begins to enter the bedroom.
We have no closet doors. We're in an open space. All this guy had to do was walk in and look to his left, and he would have seen us. And we don't know what would have occurred at that point. Had he assaulted us, then there's only one way to go there. We would have shot him.
But then he leaves. While the terrorist is in front of the house, the agents escape out the back. Later, agents listen worriedly as the visitor tells Juan Segarra what happened. The terrorists begin searching the house. If they find the microphone, it could ruin years of hard work. FBI Special Agent Jose Rodriguez.
What's going to happen to the investigation? Is it burned? Or are all of them going to flee, go underground?
But the terrorists fail to find the microphone. Once again, Puerto Rico's high crime rate helps cover the FBI's tracks.
We did hear them conversing about this incident. They don't know if it was FBI or not. Could have been a burglar.
Agents watch Segarra go out at night to make phone calls, leaving his wife and child at home. Through their listening devices, they hear him make calls to his mistress in Boston about laundering money.
She was definitely a player in the organization. She was hiding money for him. and she was also exchanging money that they suspected to be hot for clean bills up in Boston.
Agents have just identified a major part of the money trail from the big sleep heist. They apply for authorization to put a listening device on the woman's phone. With new evidence from Segarra, agents begin planning the end game, the takedown of the Macheteros. They want to arrest all the suspects at the same time.
We didn't want someone to make a call to somebody else, say they hit me over here. So we didn't want one team to hit one place and go here and hit another place. We wanted simultaneous hits on these houses.
During the arrests, agents also went searches of more than 30 locations all across the island. To make it all happen, the FBI will need nearly 300 agents. In preparation for the takedown, the FBI secretly flies hundreds of agents and their equipment to a Navy base in Puerto Rico.
We brought down in helicopters, we brought down Suburbans, the HRT brought down all their gear. It was very massive movement of FBI personnel, something I've not seen again in my career.
But the FBI has to put the raids on hold when the number 2 Machetero suddenly goes to Mexico.
Juan Segarra Palmer was a very important individual in this case. A lot of the evidence that would point to his guilt would also point to the guilt of others. We needed him at trial.
Hundreds of agents wait for Segarra to return to U.S. soil. From the wiretap on his mistress's phone, investigators know that Segarra plans to return soon. A tense week passes. Finally, Segarra leaves a message on her answering machine.
He tells her, I'm in Dallas, and here's my phone number where I can be reached.
The FBI uses a reverse directory and finds that the number belongs to a payphone at the Dallas-Fort Worth airport. Dallas FBI agents find Segarra by a payphone, waiting for his mistress to call back. They plan to arrest him at the same moment as the rest of the raid. In Puerto Rico, agents get into position to hit dozens of locations simultaneously.
Here's where the adrenaline started pumping. This was a culmination of a lot of intense work on the parts of a lot of people.
At the home of Machetero leader Filiberto Ojeda, FBI SWAT and members of the elite FBI hostage rescue team surround the building and order Ojeda to come out and surrender.
They were calling him by name, telling him that we had an arrest warrant, asking him to come out, give himself up.
Ojeda doesn't answer. SWAT finally decides to go in and get him.
A burst of automatic fire came down the stairwell. One of those rounds ricocheted off the wall and struck the team leader in the eye.
Agents pull the injured man to safety and call for a medevac helicopter. They know that soon they'll have to go back inside to confront a terrorist who won't go down without a fight and won't hesitate to kill. The FBI attempts to arrest the leader of a deadly terrorist group. But he opens fire, hitting an HRT member in the eye. After evacuating the wounded man, FBI agents continue to urge the terrorist leader to surrender. FBI Special Agent Jose Rodriguez.
Finally, he started coming down the stairs. When he did, he had a Uzi slung over his right shoulder, and his left hand could not be seen. He had his left hand down to the side of his pants.
Terrorist leader Filiberto Ojeda continues slowly down the stairs.
As he got down to the base of the stairs, he raised his left hand, and the HRT member saw that he had a semi-automatic handgun. The HRT member yelled for him to drop it. When he didn't, the HRT member had fired 2 times, and he saw Ojeda buckle, and he thought that he had struck Ojeda in the chest.
The shot actually hit Ojeda's handgun. Although unhurt, he gives up. In Dallas, Juan Segarra is arrested without incident. FBI Special Agent Fernando Candelario escorts Ojeda to jail.
I told him I'm a Puerto Rican and I have as much right to live here as you do. And he told me, yes, but you're the enemy. If I have to kill you, I will.
Over the next 3 years, Ojeda's attorneys do everything possible to postpone his trial.
The case was delayed and delayed and delayed, primarily by the defense, because they filed motion after motion after motion. Ojeda Rios was in jail for a total of 36 months, primarily based upon defense motions.
After all the legal wrangling, his attorneys now claim he must be released on bond because his right to a speedy trial has been violated. The claim goes all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. The Supreme Court rules that Ojeda must be released to await trial. Over the FBI's protests, Ojeda goes free, wearing an electronic monitoring bracelet.
We knew that wasn't going to hold him. Of course, he wasn't in our custody at that point. He's the responsibility of the pretrial services.
While awaiting trial, Ojeda gives speeches to try to build support for the Macheteros.
Now he can brag about the Macheteros. Now he's no longer covert, he's overt.
While Ojeda's attorneys delay, 4 other Macheteros, including Juan Segarra, are convicted in Hartford, Connecticut for their roles in the Big Sleep heist. A year after his release on bond, Ojeda makes a bold statement to the media and cuts off his electronic bracelet. He disappears into the rugged mountains to resume his fight to turn the island into a communist dictatorship. 2 years later, a federal court in Connecticut convicts Ojeda in absentia of bank robbery and conspiracy. With his conviction, 14 of the top Macheteros have been found guilty. While Ojeda is at large, the FBI keeps up the pressure to find him. FBI Special Agent Fernando Candelario.
I'm confident that he'll be arrested again because we did it once before, you know, and when we, like they say, we always get our man, and I think that time is on our side.
In September of 2005, the FBI locates Ojeda. He is shot and killed after firing on agents. The Macheteros' reign of terror has come to an end.
And unless you're committed to go after them with as much commitment as they got, you're not going to get them. They were Macheteros 24 hours a day.
The trials also help reveal the truth about the Macheteros.
These people don't just want independence for Puerto Rico. These people want something much bigger than that. They want to convert Puerto Rico into the next Cuba.
Today, through democratic elections, the people of Puerto Rico retain the right to decide whether to become a state, remain a commonwealth, or become independent. Thanks to the FBI, they remain free to determine their own fate. On a highway in Northern Virginia, a brazen daytime shooting of employees from the Central Intelligence Agency stunned the country. The FBI were called in, but the nationwide search quickly became a far-reaching international manhunt. Agents hoped that after years of investigation, a daring operation halfway around the world would put an end to the global pursuit.
In Langley, Virginia, a terrorist fired into rush hour traffic. The victims seemed randomly selected, but the motive appeared to be political, targeting employees of the Central Intelligence Agency. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. The FBI quickly became involved in the investigation, processing more than 2,000 leads and crossing an ocean in the effort to deliver justice.
Langley, Virginia, a suburb of Washington, D.C., is home to the headquarters of the Central Intelligence Agency. Monday, January 25th, 1993. Another work week had started for thousands of CIA employees who routinely commute to their jobs at America's Global Intelligence Agency. Workers of varying security clearance and experience waited at the long light to turn left into the CIA compound. All were alone in their cars, except a young couple who had met at the CIA and had recently been married. As newlyweds, they seemed to have their entire life ahead of them. Then the young man was struck from behind by a gunman's bullet. Two employees behind the shooter fled from their vehicles as the man walked forward. A third employee sped off before he could fire. Two more ran the red light as their cars were peppered by bullets. The gunman then shot into a sixth car, hitting the 61-year-old man twice at point-blank range. Behind that car, the shooter realized the first man he shot was still alive. He aimed at the wounded man, this time killing him, but sparing his wife. Only one other employee remained. Frozen by fear, the 66-year-old was killed instantly by two quick shots. After the young woman heard the killer speed off, she ran for safety. Dozens of urgent 911 calls flooded the switchboard in Fairfax County, Virginia. All available units were ordered to respond. Emergency personnel from several towns raced to save those that clung to life. Fairfax County Detective Fred Fife is assigned as lead detective.
One of the first steps was to make sure that the scene itself was safe. We weren't sure what type of individuals we may have been dealing with, so we had to set up an armed security around the scene to prevent, a further attack.
Choppers searched for the fugitive from overhead. Several motorists reported seeing him flee into the surrounding woods after he drove off. The CIA immediately dispatched its tactical security forces to comb the 250-acre compound in and around headquarters. An exhaustive search turned up nothing. Authorities secured a 3-mile radius and closed busy Route 123 except to emergency personnel. At the crime scene, police found 2 dead and 3 critically wounded. 4 others escaped unharmed, 3 of them women. FBI Special Agent Brad Garrett arrived moments after the shooting.
The first thing you do when you walk into a crime scene is, what's the obvious? Well, the obvious is this appears to be directed towards the CIA. It might be directed towards the individuals that were shot. But it was clearly somebody wanted to make a public statement during the rush hour traffic.
The victims were rushed to area hospitals as investigators began to interview the survivors. Their first step was to alert the public and area law enforcement to the description of the fugitive and his vehicle. But most witnesses saw little, and their accounts varied.
The witnesses stated that the suspect was a male, mostly olive-complected type individual, armed with a rifle. And that was pretty much the composite description we were able to put together. Height varied. The vehicle ranged from being a brown station wagon to a blue truck. I think a lot of the people were in a panic situation and were shielding themselves from being victims.
One woman got a closer look than most. She described the shooter as a man with dark hair, in his early 30s, wearing a tan jacket and dark pants. Though he had her in his sights, For some reason, he chose not to shoot.
We looked at the individuals that were killed, and we said, could there be a connection? Had they done something in the past that someone could have wanted to take revenge on them for whatever reason, whether it be personal or professional, because you got to look at this both ways.
The immediate crime scene covered an area of 50 square yards. Glass and shell casings littered the roadway. Forensic technicians needed to record every detail before the bodies of the two slain victims could be removed from their cars, according to Fairfax County crime scene detective Jeff Miller.
I have a duty to them, and my duty is I have to be their voice. They've been murdered. Here's this person who's silent forever, and somebody has to speak up for them. And so that's the way I look at it, is I'm their voice. And it's my job to find whatever it is that's going to help us find or identify the person who's responsible for this.
Crime scene investigators recovered 10 empty shell casings. They believe they were likely fired from an AK-47. Towards the back of the cars, where the gunman began firing, technicians also recovered one live round.
The forensic evidence always tells the truth. It's never clouded by someone's perception. It never lies to you. It's always telling the truth. And it's my job to find it. All I have to do is find it. And once I find it, and I'm able to examine it, it's going to tell me exactly what happened.
The live round on the ground told investigators that the weapon was a semi-automatic and had most likely jammed before the killer fired his first round. Noting the location of the casings in relation to the shattered glass enabled the team to determine the trajectories and order of the gunman's bullets. Investigators also gathered glass samples from each of the vehicle's broken windows. They hoped the combination of several types of glass found in the same location would prove significant.
You had a number of different cars. Each of the cars was a different manufacturer. It had a German car, had an American car, had a Swedish car. The glass that's put in these cars is all different. If some of this glass had spattered back on the shooter, even though it was microscopic, someone who had these three different kinds of glass on their clothing, that might be probative of the investigation.
While investigators continued to gather evidence at the crime scene, agents and detectives visited nearby hospitals to speak to the remaining survivors. The young woman who had lost her husband in the assault hadn't seen much since she hid below the dashboard most of the time. She said that the man could have shot her at any moment, but like the previous female survivor, he turned away instead of firing. She also told investigators that she and her husband normally used a different entrance to drive into the CIA compound. FBI agent Brad Garrett wondered who else might have known this.
We immediately started looking at who within the CIA, in other words, disgruntled employees, present employees, that may have had a relationship with these people that could have retaliated for whatever reason. There's a lot of bizarre people that have applied to work for the CIA, and they've rejected a lot of people.
At the Fairfax County Command Center, the female witness who had gotten the best look at the gunman worked with a police sketch artist.
Swear.
Based on her description, investigators believe the suspect was of Hispanic or Middle Eastern background. She had not gotten as good a look at his vehicle, but recalled that it was a station wagon. Investigators released the drawings to the public, hoping to elicit leads.
One of the first things we had to do was to get out through the media that afternoon a phone number or a system where the potential witnesses that had been in that area that morning could contact us. And we needed to isolate a phone number for that purpose and get it out to the media as quickly as possible.
As calls poured in, agents and detectives were still grappling to find a clear motive for the shooting. If they could deduce a reason for the shooter's actions, it would limit the potential suspect pool. Agents searched the victims' backgrounds for possibilities as to why they may have been targeted.
He then walked up to this car and fired one more shot into car H.
Once we started looking at the backgrounds of the individuals that were shot, and we looked at the circumstances as to why they were at that intersection, it didn't appear, at least to me, that there probably was a link between them being shot, those particular individuals being shot, and the person or persons that shot them.
Just 8 hours after the shooting, Fairfax County Detective Jeff Miller examined the cartridges recovered from the pavement at the crime scene. He confirmed the shells were from an AK-47 assault rifle, a weapon used primarily by Russian and Chinese armies. Upon closer inspection, Detective Miller discovered a latent fingerprint on the shell.
The difficult part about this whole situation was cartridge casing is a cylindrical shape. The fingerprint went about 300 degrees almost all the way around this cartridge case. So what I had to do was photograph it in different steps. I'd photograph it, then I would turn it about a 1/16 of an inch, adjust the light so that it was exactly the same, and photograph it again. And then I would continue to do that over and over so that I had photographed the entire circumference of the cartridge casing.
The hour-long process yielded one complete fingerprint. It was investigators' first solid lead. Detectives fed the print into a system that was connected to 185 other databases throughout North America.
We could take that one latent fingerprint and send it to any automated fingerprint system in North America and ask them to search their database to see if that fingerprint was on file or was recorded within any of their automated systems.
Unfortunately, the extensive search provided no match.
Print it up?
Yeah.
Either the suspect had no record or he had not committed any crimes within North America. The next morning, police looked for witnesses among area commuters on Route 123 who may have seen something unusual the morning of the attack. They handed out flyers with a sketch of the suspect to 3,000 motorists. Intense media attention generated sightings from across the country. None immediately panned out, but the reports were maintained in the command center's growing database. Through the night, patrols on the roads around Northern Virginia and the Washington, D.C. area remained on high alert. That evening, a car fitting the description of the suspects was pulled over by a Virginia state trooper. The trooper called for backup, then approached the vehicle. He had no idea if he had the shooter or if the man was carrying an AK-47. On January 26, 1993, 36 hours after a lone gunman opened fire with an AK-47 in front of CIA headquarters, killing 2 and wounding 3 others, Virginia state troopers stopped a vehicle that fit the description of the suspect's car.
Put your hands up. Keep your hands up.
The killer had been described vaguely as having an olive complexion, medium build, and dark hair.
Okay, buddy, we've been looking for you.
Though the man troopers stopped also fit that description, a fingerprint check confirmed he was not the fugitive.
Okay, then we have,
By now, dozens of personnel from the CIA, ATF, and the FBI had joined Fairfax County Detective Fred Fife's team in pursuit of the murderer.
As additional manpower was needed for different areas, they were brought in and supplemented us. The FBI was very generous. They supplied us not only with the hard technology, the computers and so forth, but their clerical staff to maintain the information management system that we had designed, that we felt we could process the leads as they were coming in.
FBI Special Agent Brad Garrett was concerned that despite recovering a fingerprint from a shell casing at the crime scene, investigators were still unable to identify the perpetrator or his motive. All they knew for sure was that the gunman used an AK-47.
So I made this decision. I said, let's go back and look at all the AK-47s purchased in the last year. And the reason we did that was that typically people who commit these kind of acts buy their weapons a short time or acquire their weapons a short time before they commit the act.
Over the next several days, ATF agents visited gun shops in the Virginia and Maryland area outside of Washington, D.C., since the purchase or possession of firearms is forbidden within city limits. They discovered that 1,000 AK-47s were purchased in Northern Virginia over the past year. Another 600 had been purchased in Maryland. Agents gathered records of every purchase and entered the gun owners' names into the command center's large computer database. At firing ranges within 100 miles of CIA headquarters, agents also questioned gun owners directly.
We're investigating the shootings near the CIA headquarters.
They asked if they remembered anyone in the past year who matched the suspect's description and had practiced with an AK-47. They remembered no one. By February 1st, a week after the shooting, investigators hoped their growing database of witness descriptions and gun purchases could provide a common link among the thousands of names and police reports entered so far. Agents and detectives set parameters for the database to cross-reference the suspect's physical characteristics with those who made a recent purchase of an AK-47 and who had a local address. The computer returned one name, 28-year-old Mir Emal Kanzi. He had purchased an AK-47 3 days before the shooting. He was a Pakistani immigrant who lived in Herndon, Virginia, and was reported missing 3 days after the shooting by his roommate. Investigators immediately dispatched a team of agents to track down Mir Emal Kanzi. Kanzi was not at home, but the roommate who reported him missing worked at nearby Dulles International Airport. Kanzi's roommate, also a Pakistani immigrant, was employed by a security company to operate a magnetometer that checked passengers for weapons.
Agent Johnson, any question him? Okay. Come with me? Yes, sir. Okay.
He told the F.B.I. that he hadn't seen Kanzi for several days.
Set up an interview sometime soon. No, sir.
He said he was unable to talk at length since he was on duty, but would meet agents later at his apartment in Herndon, Virginia to answer all their questions.
If anything comes up, just give me a call. Okay, sir.
The roommate added that he was scheduled to fly back to Pakistan later in the week, but would cooperate with authorities until then. When investigators arrived to question the roommate again, he wasn't there. They soon discovered that the roommate had changed his travel plans.
A lot of the plans and commitments that he had told the FBI agent and the detective on Sunday had started to change. He gave a notice at his apartment that he was going to be leaving on Tuesday instead of Thursday. He switched a flight to Pakistan back to Tuesday. That was the first opportunity he would have to fly out of the country. We started finding all this information. He shut his utilities off at his apartment. In other words, he was preparing to leave the United States in a big hurry.
With less than 24 hours until the roommate's flight departed, agents maintained constant surveillance, hoping to catch the roommate or Kanzi at home.
What's up?
Their perseverance paid off. They found the roommate alone at home.
So,
when something would happen yesterday.
There were few items in the apartment.
Mind if I look in the bedroom?
No, no problem.
It appeared that both Kanzi and the roommate were not planning to return. The man didn't know where Kanzi was now, but consented to allow the investigators to search what was left in the barren apartment. In a suitcase stored in the bedroom, agents discovered a Beretta and Makarov automatic pistols, ammunition for an AK-47, and a bulletproof vest.
About 10 years. About 10 years. I don't know anything about that. No, sir.
The roommate denied any knowledge of the weapons and claimed that the suitcase belonged to Kanzi.
I didn't know anything about what he carries or what I would watch.
Investigators continued to search the apartment. Under a couch, wrapped in plastic, they found another gun.
I don't talk to him. I don't even have a conversation. He just pays the rent.
It was an AK-47, the same type of weapon used to kill 2 and wound 3 in front of CIA headquarters. The roommate said he didn't know the weapon was there and added that he had only met Kanzi a few months earlier when Kanzi had first moved in.
The roommate told us that Mr. Kanzi initially came to him through another Pakistani because Mr. Kanzi was looking for a place to live. The roommate said, fine, you can live with me, and they set an amount of money for Mr. Kanzi to live with him.
It's not mine.
They hoped the FBI lab could confirm forensically that they had found the murder weapon. But for now, their prime suspect, Mir Amal Kanzi, was still unaccounted for. By February 8th, 1993, 2 weeks had passed since a lone gunman opened fire with an AK-47 in front of CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, killing 2 CIA employees and wounding 3 others. The FBI, ATF, and Fairfax County Police believed 28-year-old Mir Amal Kanzi, a Pakistani immigrant, was their prime suspect. At Kanzi's apartment in Herndon, Virginia, investigators continued their search where they had found an AK-47, the same type of weapon used in the CIA shootings. Kanzi was missing, and his Pakistani roommate, who was scheduled to return to Pakistan the following day, had no idea where Kanzi was now, according to FBI Special Agent Brad Garrett.
The roommate told us that he really didn't spend much time with Mr. Kanzi. The roommate worked 2 jobs, Mr. Kanzi worked a job. They would occasionally go to the mosque together to pray, but that their interactions with each other were very limited. They were in the apartment many times at different times of the day when the other one was gone.
Hoping to assail investigators' suspicions of him, the roommate signed his consent to assist with the investigation. In a closet, investigators found a tan field jacket similar to the one witnesses had described worn by the shooter.
In fact, I've seen him.
The roommate told him the coat belonged to Kanzi. Outside the apartment, the roommate pointed out Kanzi's vehicle parked at the curb, a small pickup truck. Officers confirmed it was registered to the suspect. Inside, they spotted a map that was open to the CIA headquarters area in Langley, Virginia.
Okay, look at that.
Close by, they also saw a clipping about the CIA director. Agents would need to secure a warrant before they could conduct a more thorough search. If this was the vehicle used by the killer, witnesses' descriptions of the car at the shooting had been wrong. Though the roommate had cooperated with investigators, Fairfax County Detective Fred Fife wasn't going to take any chances.
We knew Mr. Kanzi's roommate was planning on leaving the United States because he had purchased airline tickets for a flight out of the United States, which was one way. He was not planning on returning. He was deemed a material witness to the investigation and subsequently taken into custody and held based on his abilities to flee the United States.
At police headquarters, investigators continued to question Kanzi's roommate.
He might do something violent. It was the night that
He told them Kanzi had worked as a messenger for a local courier service since August of 1992. 6 months earlier, in February 1992, Kanzi had received political asylum and a work permit from the Immigration and Naturalization Service.
We were fortunate in this case that we had Mr. Kanzi's prints because he had no criminal record in the United States. But the Immigration Service here in the U.S. had fingerprinted him at one point because he had asked for asylum here in the United States. So they had a fingerprint card that we were able to get from them.
Lab technicians were called in to process the forensic evidence through the night as the roommate told investigators more about Kanzi.
Directed against the American.
He said Kanzi was usually quiet. But when he watched television news reports, he became enraged at how Muslims were being treated during conflicts in Bosnia, Iraq, and Israel. That's when Kanzi vowed to take action.
The roommate eventually admitted that Mr. Kanzi had told him that he was going to go do something big. And we asked him to define big, and he said, well, I'm not sure, but maybe a shooting of some sort. And he mentioned going and doing something big at the CIA, the White House, or the Israeli embassy.
Agents believe the roommate was not connected with the shootings. But he was not permitted to leave the country until the investigation was complete. Lab examiners compared the fingerprint lifted from the shell casing found at the shooting to Kanzi's fingerprint on file at the INS. They matched. Investigators also confirmed that the serial number of the weapon recovered in the apartment matched the serial number of the Chinese-made AK-47 purchased by Kanzi 3 days before the CIA killings. Kanzi had presented 2 forms of ID for a Virginia State Police background check, and the purchase had been approved within minutes. FBI lab examiners then compared bullets and shell casings test-fired through Kanzi's AK-47 with the bullets and shell casings collected from the crime scene by Fairfax detective Jeff Miller.
The firearms examiner was able to say that the bullets at the crime scene were fired from the gun that was collected from Kanzi's apartment. He was also able to examine the cartridge casings that he test-fired at the laboratory from the AK-47 and compare them to the cartridge casings that I collected at the crime scene. And he was able to say that the cartridge casings at the crime scene were in fact fired from the same weapon.
Technicians next examined the field jacket seized from Kanzi's apartment closet. If this was the same coat witnesses had seen the shooter wearing when he fired point blank into their vehicles, tiny shards of glass would be embedded in its material.
You had glass from a German car, glass from a Swedish car, glass from an American car, and if he had all 3 of those types of glass in his clothing or on his shoes, then that would be pretty obvious that he was, if not there, at least he was near the scene when it happened, because he's got all this glass on him. They were able to find glass particles in his clothing that matched the type of glass that came from all of the vehicles at the scene.
Investigators had enough evidence to charge Mir Emal Kanzi with capital murder and malicious wounding. The FBI also filed charges of flight to avoid prosecution and offered a $100,000 reward for information leading to Kanzi's capture. Agents fanned out to interview members of the Washington area Pakistani community. They were looking for Kanzi's friends, acquaintances, or anyone who had come into contact with him.
F.B.I.
We learned that Mr. Kanzi had gone to a market in Herndon, Virginia, and the individual who ran the market had a connection at a travel agency. And we learned through this individual that Mr. Kanzi had come to him on the afternoon of the 25th, the day of the shooting, and bought a one-way ticket to Pakistan.
The manager said that Kanzi had only one suitcase and needed a ride to the airport, so the manager drove Kanzi there himself. Agents confirmed that Kanzi boarded a flight to Quetta, Pakistan, a city less than 80 miles from the Afghanistan border. 2 weeks after the shooting spree at the CIA headquarters, a worldwide manhunt for the killer got underway. The investigation would begin 8,000 miles away from the crime scene in the Muslim nation of Pakistan. In February 1993, 32-year-old Pakistani Mir Emal Kanzi was wanted by the FBI for killing 2 and wounding 3 CIA employees on the highway outside CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia. 2 weeks after the shooting, agents learned that on January 25th, Kanzi had boarded a one-way flight to Quetta, Pakistan, a city less than 80 miles from the Afghanistan border. By now, he could be anywhere. Finding the fugitive halfway around the world presented overwhelming problems for FBI Special Agent Brad Garrett.
One of the difficulties in investigating any case overseas is that, first of all, you have no jurisdiction to begin with. You're just another citizen, a U.S. citizen traveling to a foreign country. So the key in catching any fugitive, obviously, is developing intelligence information. And you do that typically through informants.
The FBI turned to DEA Supervisory Special Agent Gregory Lee for help. Since Pakistan had been a major source country of heroin and hashish, the DEA already had established many reliable contacts and informants over the previous 10 years. At the time of the investigation, Agent Lee was the resident agent in charge of the DEA's office in Karachi, Pakistan.
Well, the working environment there is a complete contrast to what an FBI agent would be used to working domestically in the United States. And it's like you literally fell out of a tree and then showed up at a place that is foreign to him in every way, to include the language, the infrastructure, how to get around, who to see. We could provide him with protection, with weapons, with anything he needed to help conduct his investigation.
In a country of 135 million people that was politically volatile and had rampant corruption among officials, the FBI would need all the help it could get. Agent Garrett also realized that Kanzi would have many sympathetic supporters who could hide him in Pakistan or even in neighboring Afghanistan.
He would be respected in Afghanistan. In fact, he was respected in Pakistan. The CIA, in particular, and the U.S. government in general, is not well liked in either one of those countries. And as a result, people didn't want to give you information about him, because they thought what he did was, in some people's words, heroic.
In March of 1993, the U.S. State Department declared Kanzi's alleged attack on CIA employees an act of terrorism and raised the reward for information leading to his capture to $2 million. With the groundwork established, Agent Garrett boarded a 21-hour flight to Karachi, Pakistan. When he landed, DEA agents had already arranged for him to meet his first contact. Agents distributed pamphlets and matchbooks with Kanzi's photo, publicizing the $2 million reward in English, Arabic, and Punjabi. The reward generated leads from as far away as Thailand and London. But informants in Pakistan claimed Kanzi was hiding among the small border towns and tribes in Afghanistan.
Kanzi's family originally was from Afghanistan. Their family roots go back to Afghanistan. And keep in mind that the city that Kanzi is from, Quetta, Pakistan, is only about 80 miles from Afghanistan. And so the natural link between Kanzi, Quetta, family heritage, and Afghanistan made sense.
Agents traveled to Kanzi's large family home in Quetta and interviewed his brothers who were wealthy landowners. They confirmed that he had visited them back in January, a few days after the shooting in Virginia. Kanzi arrived unannounced, carrying only one small bag. That was unusual, considering the length of the trip from the U.S. The brothers also thought it was odd that Kanzi was wearing no coat, since winter in Pakistan was then at its coldest. Kanzi only stayed for a few days, then left as quickly as he'd arrived. He didn't tell them where he was going, and they hadn't heard from him since.
Not very long, just enough to...
A few weeks later, the brothers became aware that their brother Amal was a wanted terrorist from reports on CNN.
Give you our card.
Agents believed it was likely that Kanzi had disappeared over the nearby border of Afghanistan.
We knew that it would be safer for him in Afghanistan because, by and large, Afghanistan, particularly back then, is a country that's just basically a bunch of tribes that control different parts of Afghanistan. At that particular time, really had no central government that had control of Afghanistan. So it's like, who would you even go to ask permission to come into Afghanistan?
The investigation had hit a dead end. Agents returned from Pakistan without the fugitive. Kanzi's trail went cold for the next 3 years, so the State Department raised the reward for information leading to his capture to $3.5 million. While Agent Garrett waited in Washington for the reward money to flush out a viable informant, he spent time with FBI fingerprint experts. Since so much time had passed, he needed to learn how to recognize Kanzi through his fingerprints in order to be certain they had the right man if he was arrested in a remote location. The agent studied the unique ridges and grooves of each one of Kanzi's 10 fingerprints that he'd given the INS years earlier.
I see that.
He was also taught how to fingerprint a resisting suspect under field conditions.
This is a case that obviously took a large chunk of my life to work on, you know, and I guess one of my fears might be that we never would catch him, you know, and, you know, which is entirely possible.
In April 1997, after 4 years of pursuit, an FBI agent at the U.S. consulate in Karachi, Pakistan, received a call from one of their more reliable sources. The man claimed he had information on Kanzi's whereabouts, but the informant didn't want to say more over the phone.
All right.
He told the agent to wait in a public place and that a second man would contact him on his cell phone in an hour. The crowded streets of Karachi would provide ample cover. If the wrong people saw the informant talking to an American agent, he would certainly be killed. As instructed, the agent waited on the street for the call. The agent hoped his contact would have viable information that would finally lead the FBI to Kanzi. The informant claimed he not only knew where Kanzi was, but that he could put the fugitive in a specific hotel at a certain time to enable his arrest. The informant represented a group of Kanzi's protectors who decided the reward money was too great to pass up. The highest levels of the U.S. government were involved. The White House approved a secret arrest plan. The Secretary of State then secured permission from the Pakistani leader for U.S. agents to carry out the operation.
Pakistan is very sensitive to their image. They're very proud people. They don't like the idea of a Pakistani being identified as an international terrorist, somebody who would travel halfway around the world to Washington for the purpose of killing CIA employees. To them, he's an embarrassment.
Gentlemen, welcome.
Agents arrived in Pakistan with a special ops team from the FBI training facility in Quantico, Virginia.
Just exactly what our intelligence.
They would need to extract Kanzi from a hotel room in a remote desert town in north-central Pakistan, where their informant promised he'd be.
Getting his fingerprint is going to be key. Gentlemen, let me direct
Each member would be assigned a task based on a surveillance report of the hotel's layout.
Kanzi is
Agents secured a room across from the hotel where the informant claimed Kanzi would be staying. They had no way to independently confirm if Kanzi was there. All they had was the informant's word. The informant told investigators that Kanzi's room was on an upper floor.
All right, let's do that. That's great. Okay.
Based on the informant's description of the interior layout, agents would have to first secure the lobby and then the stairwell before they could enter Kanzi's room. The informant added that the hotel did not lock its front door and had no security guard.
Show us where the person
We took that information, we developed an arrest plan, how we were going to enter the room, who was going to do hall security, what we were going to do once we were in the room. Because it's extremely important when you do arrest scenarios that everyone know exactly where they're going and what they're supposed to do.
Each had their assignments. Once they secured the lobby and stairwell, the front agent would coax the fugitive out of his room by calling for morning prayer. They put on body armor and checked their weapons. To hide their paraphernalia, they wore shalwar kamises, traditional Pakistani clothing, over their Western garb. On June 15, 1997, the operation to arrest Mir Emal Kanzi went into action. The team arrived at 4 a.m., figuring there'd be fewer people on the street at that early hour. But when they tried to enter the hotel, they found the front door was locked.
We can't get in. So here's 4 Americans dressed up in Pakistani garb standing out, at 4:05 in the morning outside this hotel. Clearly the anxiety was, off the charts because of where you were. It's almost like you're in a dream a little bit. It's like this is surreal.
To make matters worse, the street was filled with people who likely noticed that the Americans were clearly out of place.
We didn't realize that this particular location was extremely hot in the summer. So people started to work at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. So the street was full of people. So it's another thing that we didn't calculate for.
The informant had been wrong about the locked door. After 4.5 years of pursuing Kanzi, the FBI had hit another obstacle. On June 15, 1997, an FBI arrest team disguised in Pakistani garb attempted to gain entry to a locked hotel in north-central Pakistan where they believed suspected terrorist Mir Emal Kanzi was hiding. But to FBI Special Agent Brad Garrett, it appeared that their informant had misled the team.
When we went up to the hotel, and the initial intelligence was that the door would be unlocked and there'd be no security guard, and we get there and the door is locked, and then within a few minutes we realized that there is a security guard there.
Agents summoned the guard and pushed their way into the hotel. The team secured the lobby and moved quickly up the stairs. They hoped the informant had been correct about Kanzi's room number, if the fugitive was in fact there at all. When everyone was in place, the front agent knocked on the door and called for morning prayer to coax out whoever was on the other side of the door. If Kanzi was inside, he may be armed. Agents prepared for the worst. The door cracked open, and the agents pushed forward. The man put up a struggle and began to scream. He had to be gagged so others in the hotel would not be awakened.
I tell him, after he calms down a little bit, that if I take the gag off, will you promise not to yell anymore? And he said yes. So we take the gag off. He doesn't yell anymore. I ask him his name. He says an obscenity to me in English. He didn't look like his picture. He gained weight. And I said, I'm not sure if this is the right guy.
The agent hoped the man's fingerprint would match prints Kanzi had provided for the INS 6 years earlier.
Okay, guys.
He inked the suspect's thumb and compared it to Kanzi's known thumbprint.
What are you?
The prints matched. After more than 4 years and 8,000 miles, the FBI finally had suspected terrorist Mir Emal Kanzi in custody. But their mission was by no means complete. Not only did they have to get Kanzi and themselves out of the hotel safely, but also out of Pakistan altogether. DEA Supervisory Special Agent Gregory Lee assisted the FBI with logistical support in Pakistan.
You've got a guy in custody now, and you're in a foreign land, you're about 8,000 miles from home, you're out in what's essentially the high desert that would be Death Valley here, and you're trying to get this guy from Pakistan back to the United States.
Americans holding a Pakistani citizen captive in his own country is dangerous. Agents drove the international fugitive to a waiting helicopter and flew him to Islamabad, where permission for extradition was granted the next day. FBI headquarters in Washington was informed with a code phrase: the package has been delivered. The arrest team flew Kanzi out of Pakistan on an Air Force plane. To avoid landing in a foreign country, the plane was refueled in mid-air, so Kanzi could not ask for asylum before facing justice in the United States. During the 21-hour non-stop flight, Kanzi confided that he'd been in Afghanistan for almost the entire 4 years while he was on the run. He also claimed responsibility for the shooting in front of CIA headquarters. As a political statement against the CIA of the United States, he had decided to kill workers before they pulled into the heavily guarded entrance. He explained that he didn't shoot any women because Islam forbids it. He said that after the shooting, he was surprised that he was still alive. So he drove to a nearby park, went to lunch, then bought a plane ticket to Pakistan.
I said, well, why did you quit shooting? Because you had told us earlier that you had all this ammunition on you and that we had found all this ammunition in your apartment. And he said that he ran out of people to shoot.
Affirming that his statement had been given freely and willingly, Kanzi signed his confession. After arriving in the U.S., a chopper transported the prisoner to a secure location. Under heavy security, agents delivered Kanzi to the Fairfax County Police to face the murder and assault charges. Fairfax County Detective Jeff Miller remembers that day.
Having him captured and brought back to the United States showed to the whole rest of the world that the United States, the FBI, the Central Intelligence Agency, is not going to just let this sort of thing lie and not do something about it. No matter how long it takes, no matter where these kinds of people may hide, the United States is going to do their very best to try and track these people down and bring them back to justice.
Kanzi was found guilty of murder, malicious shooting, and using a firearm in the commission of a felony. He was sentenced to death and is scheduled for execution in 2002. In the wake of the shootings, memorials to the slain victims were established on Highway 123, where they fell to the gunman's bullets. The CIA tightened its security at the Langley compound and at all of its offices around the world. A successful investigation would prove to be another in the long line of battles against terrorism. For nearly 2 decades, a mathematical genius with delusions of single-handedly destroying industrial society planted or mailed powerful bombs to unsuspecting, innocent victims. It was a spree of mayhem that killed 3 and wounded over 2 dozen. In the largest and most expensive investigation in FBI history, agents spent 17 years hunting for the elusive terrorist known as the Unabomber.
first bomb came in the spring of 1978. The damage it caused was minimal, but its impact would be enormous. With each new detonation, the bomber learned a little more about bombs, and law enforcement learned a little more about the man who sent them. Because its targets were universities and airlines, the FBI called him the Unabomber. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former director of the FBI's New York office. Before we ever knew the name Ted Kaczynski, we knew we were dealing with a disgruntled genius. We just didn't know how smart or how angry he truly was, or how far he'd go. But while the Unabomber was carefully perfecting his bombs, we were refining our profile. It was all a matter of who would finish first.
On May 25, 1978, an engineering professor named Buckley Christ at Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois, appeared in the mailroom with a shoebox-sized parcel. Professor Christ was listed as the return addressee, and he didn't know the man it was addressed to. Campus security guard Terry Marker cracked, "Maybe it's a bomb." As bombs go, it wasn't much of one. It began a 20-year streak of violence that would stump the FBI and terrorize the nation. On November 15, 1979, American Airlines Flight 444 took off from Chicago, bound for Washington, D.C. As the Boeing 727 reached cruising altitude, the cabin filled with smoke. It was pandemonium. The plane was diverted to Dulles Airport in Virginia. A dozen people were treated for smoke inhalation. But for a faulty wire in the bomb, over 100 people would have been killed. Bombing an airliner is a federal offense. The FBI was called in. FBI agent Chris Ronay examined the evidence of the airline bomb.
It essentially was a wooden box that looked to be hand-fashioned, handmade. We found that it contained a barometric switch and some other initiating components, batteries, wires, and a container for the explosive charge. The barometric switch would function when the pressure changed in the baggage compartment sufficiently to close the switch or allow the barometric switch to function and then actually detonate the bomb.
The use of an altitude-sensitive barometric switch told the FBI that they were dealing with a serious and smart bomber. Ronay began his inquiries with the Chicago police. He was looking for anything to compare to the airline device. At Northwestern University, a thorough search uncovered the existence of two minor and seemingly unrelated incidents at the university. In addition to learning of the device that injured Terry Marker, Ronay learned of another. On May 9, 1979, another bomb had gone off at Northwestern University, seriously injuring graduate student John Harris. Its design was nearly identical to the first one. But since they were both relatively minor incidents, authorities at the time didn't connect the two. Dismissing those devices as amateurish pranks, the recovered debris was discarded. Working only from photographs, Chris Ronay concluded that all three bombs were the work of the same person.
There were construction techniques, the way the wood was cut, the way it was put together, the markings on the wood, the way the tape was applied, that is evident in the photographs, was the same as in the previous cases.
The pipe bombs, placed inside wooden boxes, were all made of ordinary components: screws and nails and smokeless powder and black tape. The components were homemade and sanded to render them untraceable.
Certain components were not crafted as much as fondled and played with and looked at, and you could see they were handled and shaped and reshaped. And it just struck me that somebody spent an awful lot of time on this bomb, enjoying putting it together.
The FBI realized they were dealing with a serial bomber, one that was passionate about his craft. In the 1950s, a shy, highly intelligent boy from suburban Illinois named Ted Kaczynski skipped a grade in elementary school. He was an introvert, preferring to withdraw into his room to study, especially to study chemistry. He was a prodigy with genius-level intelligence. His IQ topped 170. He entered Harvard at 16 and graduated in 3 years in 1962. In 5 years, he had received his doctorate from the University of Michigan. As an assistant professor of mathematics at the University of California, Berkeley, Kaczynski was not a popular or outgoing professor. Practically no one got to know him. In 1969, he abruptly resigned. The social nature of his teaching position was too much for Ted. He just didn't seem to fit in. By 1971, Kaczynski had decided to drop out of society completely. He bought an acre and a half of land in a rural area just outside of Lincoln, Montana, 6,000 feet above the society he had come to despise. He built a tiny 8 by 10 foot cabin with no electricity or running water. There he would sit by himself, reading and writing. One of the things Ted wrote was a 23-page essay raging against modern man's obsession with technological and scientific progress. Scientific research, he wrote, will inevitably result in the extinction of individual liberty. He sent a copy to his brother David. David read it and stuck it in a trunk where it sat for a quarter of a century. In June of 1978, Ted Kaczynski took a time out from his cabin to take a job working for his brother at a foam cutting plant in Illinois. Ted's bizarre behavior became too much. His brother was forced to fire him.
Ted, take it down.
Ted had insulted a female co-worker who had refused his advances. Ted seethed and within a year moved back to his cabin in Montana, vowing never to see his family again. Trying to fit in as a social being was too frustrating for the introverted genius. Ted withdrew even more, believing modern man incapable of understanding him. He was starting to see civil society as an obstacle that needed to be overcome. In time, Ted became acclimated to his life with few luxuries. He took it upon himself to grow his own food and to be otherwise self-sufficient. He had few acquaintances, opting for his own company in the Montana wilds. Ted rarely made it into Lincoln. When he did, it was usually to bury his face in reference books in the small-town library. On May 3rd, 1980, Ted Kaczynski rode his homemade bike into Lincoln. He wasn't going to the library this time. Instead, he caught a bus for Helena and checked into the Helena Park Hotel for a brief stay. The next day, he headed west. Ted had urgent business that needed tending to. Percy Wood, the president of United Airlines, received a parcel at his suburban Chicago home on June 10th, 1980. A few days earlier, he received a letter from a stranger promising to mail him a book which, the letter said, had tremendous social significance. Wood placed the package on his kitchen counter. He opened and retrieved a book, Ice Brothers by Sloan Wilson. Wood was puzzled. Why is this book socially significant? He opened the cover. Wood was nearly killed. The bomber had upped the ante considerably with his fourth and most powerful device yet. FBI and ATF bomb technicians poured over the scene. It was quickly identified as the work of the serial bomber. Each bomb so far had been a pipe bomb with similar construction and wiring. On this, the fourth bomb, the bomber had left a calling card. Punched into a piece of rubble were the letters FC.
Certainly the initials FC were put in these bombs to be found, clearly protected in such a way that they would survive the blasts. It didn't make any sense to have it in there. It didn't function in any way. It served no purpose except to say, here's my signature, here's an identifying feature.
The FBI could only speculate what FC meant. By this time, FBI investigators had already given him a name. He bombed universities and airlines. They called him Unabomber, UN for university and A for airline. Naming him was easy. Finding him would be much, much more difficult. In 1981, with FC their best clue yet, the FBI cross-referenced thousands of people with those initials. But the Unabomber was not sitting idle. In October, a package was found sitting in a building at the University of Utah. It was a pipe bomb. Fortunately, it was a dud. Investigators now had a device intact. Perhaps a component was traceable. It would take time to find out. The Unabomber remained busy. In the spring of 1982, a package meant for Professor Leroy Wood Berenson blew up instead in the hands of an academic assistant at Vanderbilt University. The bomb was made of the usual materials, with the initials FC on the surviving wreckage. Examiners spent endless hours studying every minute detail of the Unabomber devices. The most bizarre clue suddenly emerged. The last two people specifically targeted were named Wood.
Wood played such an important role in every one of the bombs. I mean, it was present in every one of the bombs, even when it didn't need to be. He, in fact, if he didn't have wood in it, he threw wood in it, sticks of wood, just so they'd be there. There were references to wood in addresses and names of people throughout.
FBI lab examiner Doug Diedrich of the Trace Evidence Unit is also a wood expert.
Well, the materials may indicate something about that individual, may indicate where he might live, what he might do for a living. And that's one of the things that I was involved with, especially in trying to determine where these types of woods came from, what geographical area, what part of the country.
This approach seemed like a long shot, but the scarcity of clues left investigators with few options. As the FBI investigation intensified, so did the power of the Unabomber's devices. On July 2nd, 1982, Professor Diogenes Angelakos of the University of California, Berkeley, a devoted husband and a popular teacher, noticed a strange-looking object on the floor of the computer science department's coffee room. The explosion seriously wounded him and tore off his fingers. As he lay dazed, he found a typewritten note. Woo, it works. I told you it would. RV. The FBI ran down everyone in America named Wu, and everyone with the initials RV, a monumental, labor-intensive task, but to no avail.
This is the problem, right?
The note was a ruse.
She's going to have to do it over again. It's going to take how long?
Another lead surfaced the day following the blast. A custodian who worked in Corey Hall, the building where the bomb exploded, saw a man with a thin mustache and sweatshirt loitering in the hall the night before. The custodian, however, was unable to remember enough details to help a sketch artist make a composite. Angelakos was critically wounded, requiring a lengthy hospital stay. He was no longer able to care for his invalid wife. She died within a month of the blast. In May of 1985, in that same building, Berkeley graduate student John Hauser, a captain in the Air Force, noticed on the floor a 3-ring binder sitting on top of another object. Hauser had just applied for astronaut training. What he didn't know as he lay wounded was that he had already been accepted into the program. But he would never fly again. His Air Force Academy ring was found embedded in the wall across the room. Ironically, Professor Angelakos was nearby when the bomb exploded. He rushed to help Hauser. Unabomber-related crime scene investigations conducted by the FBI, ATF, and the United States Postal Service had become frustratingly routine. The recovered bomb components were packaged and sent to the FBI lab for future comparisons. Over the next few years, there would be many such examinations. On May 8, 1985, a package was received at the Boeing Corporation in Auburn, Washington. It was addressed only to the company, was heavy, and had too much postage.
Hey, Mark, look at this.
A suspicious mailroom employee called security. The package was X-rayed and shown to contain a pipe bomb. It had FC stamped into the end caps. Had the employee opened the package, it most likely would have killed him and anyone else nearby. On November 15, 1985, Dr. James McConnell, a psychology professor at the University of Michigan, received a letter and package from a Ralph C. Kloppenberg. The sender described himself as a doctoral student. "I'd like you to read this book," he wrote. "Everyone in your position should read this book." As he read, his assistant opened the package nearby. The explosion seriously injured the assistant and blew out the hearing of Dr. McConnell. Examiners continued to dissect the bombs. They were evolving as the Unabomber refined his craft. Exhaustive lab tests showed they were getting more sophisticated and more powerful. Agents were frustrated. They were making little progress in determining the identity of the Unabomber. And their analysis was confirming what they already knew. If the packages kept coming, it would only be a matter of time before someone was killed. Hugh Scruton owned the Rentec computer store in Sacramento, California. On December 11, 1985, about lunchtime, Scruton headed out the back door that led to the rear parking lot when he noticed something. It looked like a block of wood with 4 nails sticking out, points up. The explosion was ferocious, blowing a massive gaping hole into Scruton's chest, exposing his heart. The Unabomber was now a murderer. The bomb that killed Hugh Scruton was the most powerful yet. It consisted of a pipe within a pipe and contained all of the same characteristics as the others, right down to the FC stamped on a surviving end cap. The Unabomber investigation was now officially a homicide case. Investigators stuck to their strategy of keeping the details of the case secret, lest the Unabomber learn what they knew, or worse, lest they encourage copycats. Agents were desperate for a solid lead. Ted Kaczynski was always active in his secluded cabin. When he wasn't making bombs, he was writing his philosophy that justified them. For Ted Kaczynski, technological society was a horror, defined by the Earth's destruction and human beings amounting to little more than mindless robots. In Ted's story, anyone who was participating in the human race's dependency on technology was a villain. On February 20th, 1987, a secretary at Cam's computer store in Salt Lake City looked out of her office window and caught a glimpse of a man in the parking lot, placing an object on the ground. An hour later, the store's owner, Gary Wright, was in the parking lot. He noticed the object on the ground. It was a block of wood with 4 nails sticking out, points up. Wright received serious injuries, but miraculously survived. As police scoured bus stations and local businesses looking for a suspect, a sketch was commissioned from the secretary's description. It was unquestionably the portrait of a man in disguise. The sketch didn't catch the Unabomber, but in one way it may have worked. Knowing he was seen, the Unabomber seemed to vanish. After 9 years of bombings, Unabomber-related incidents simply stopped after the 1987 Cams explosion. The investigation had continued, but all available leads had been exhausted. After 6 years of silence, investigators were hopeful that the Unabomber had either been imprisoned on some unrelated charge or died. Either way, the bombs had stopped. But Ted Kaczynski was neither dead nor in jail. He had spent the last 6 years virtually alone. Content in his day-to-day routine, tending the garden, hunting, writing, and visiting the library, Ted always managed to stay on top of current events. In 1993, after a 6-year hiatus, several highly publicized events propelled the Unabomber out of retirement. The fiery siege at Waco, Texas, between the ATF and the Branch Davidian religious cult, and the bombing of the World Trade Center created a violent political environment. The Unabomber would return in a fit of violence of his own. Dr. Charles Epstein is a renowned geneticist at the University of San Francisco. On June 22, 1993, he sat down at his kitchen table to open his mail, including a padded envelope which had arrived that day. The blast critically injured Dr. Epstein. After 2.5 hours of surgery, he was stabilized and very lucky to be alive. Two days later, on June 24th, Dr. David Galernter, a prominent computer scientist at Yale University, arrived early at his office to open his mail from the previous day. Injured in his right arm, eye, and abdomen, Galernter struggled to his feet and went out the door for help. The FBI quickly determined that the Epstein bomb and the Galerner bomb were identical. Pipe bombs filled with potassium chlorate and aluminum powder. Both devices had been placed inside a handcrafted wooden box. A few hours after the Galerner bomb went off, a letter was received in the mailroom of the New York Times. It was from a self-proclaimed anarchist group called FC, who were claiming responsibility for the recent bombings. FC promised more communications in the future. An identifying number was provided to the Times to ensure the authenticity of future communications. It was 553-25-4394. The FBI determined that the number was a Social Security number of a 20-year-old parolee in Northern California, incredibly with a tattoo on his arm reading "Pure Wood." An investigation quickly dismissed him as the Unabomber. Another major clue was discovered. Impressed into the paper on the New York Times letter was the faint notation, "Call Nathan R., Wednesday, 7 p.m." The elusive Unabomber finally provided agents with a solid lead. The FBI talked to over 10,000 people whose first name was Nathan and whose last name began with R. The exhaustive search turned up nothing. It seemed the Unabomber loved sending the FBI on wild goose chases. The Times ran the letter, which sparked public interest. It also drew the FBI into dozens of false leads. Disgruntled students, aircraft engineers, even a Dungeons and Dragons club in Chicago. The latest round of activity had sent the FBI investigation into overdrive. A Unabomb task force consisting of FBI, ATF, and postal inspectors was formed to coordinate investigative efforts. Jim Freeman was the head of the FBI's San Francisco field office. He would also head the multi-agency Unabomb task force.
We had evidence that was scattered around 3 different federal agencies and a lot of local state laboratories. So we recognized that our task was to gain control of the information that was already out there, determine what investigation had already been done. And we set about this by deciding to reinvestigate every Unabomb crime.
Every shred of physical evidence that remained from past Unabomber devices would be given to one forensic examiner. Special Agent Tom Monell of the FBI Laboratory's Materials and Devices Unit became the chief examiner for the investigation.
All the evidence in the Unabomb case, no matter if it was explosive related or not, came through me and my unit. In a serial bombing type case such as the Unabomb case, the most frustrating aspect was the fact that we were doing all forensic examinations that could possibly be done to the evidence, and it wasn't able to lead us to any individual.
While the task force struggled, Kaczynski's warped revolution against society continued. On December 10th, 1994, advertising executive Thomas Moser was opening his mail in his North Caldwell, New Jersey home. His wife and 2 daughters were upstairs. He examined a small package with excessive postage from an H.C. Wickel, Department of Economics, San Francisco State University. The explosion was the most gruesome yet, instantly decapitating Thomas Moser. With every previous device in the Unabomber investigation, Agent Monell was able to reconstruct a replica, working only from the debris recovered from the various crime scenes. As with the 15 bombs he had reconstructed, this one was unquestionably the work of the Unabomber. A few months later, Ted Kaczynski prepared for an extended visit to the West Coast. This trip would be his busiest to date. On April 19, 1995, Ted Kaczynski was in the San Francisco Bay Area when Timothy McVeigh's 2,000-pound fuel oil bomb destroyed the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City, killing 168 people. Ted would not let his agenda be eclipsed by the devastation in Oklahoma. The next day, April 20th, the nation still reeling over Oklahoma City, Kaczynski mailed 5 items, 4 letters, and a parcel. Within a few days, the mail arrived back east. First was a letter to the New York Times. FBI Special Agent Terry Turchie was second in command of the Unabomber task force.
In the letter to the New York Times, he mentioned that he was claiming responsibility for the attacks on Thomas Moser, Charles Epstein, and David Gelernter. He also mentioned some of his goals and objectives and said that he was thinking of sending a manuscript or essay and that he wanted them to consider publishing that essay. And if they did, he would make an agreement to cease committing terrorist acts.
The second letter received was to recent victim David Gelernter at Yale, still recovering from his April wounding. The letter was taunting. Dr. Gelernter, people with advanced degrees are not as smart as they think they are. If you'd had any brains, you would have realized that there are a lot of people out there who resent bitterly the way techno-nerds like you are changing the world. On April 25th, 1995, a package arrived at the California Forestry Association addressed to its former president, William Dennison. Its current president, Gilbert Murray, decided to open it himself. It exploded with incredible violence, destroying everything in the office. Gil Murray was literally blown to pieces. 4 blocks away, the governor of California heard the blast from his office. The Unabomber scare was nationwide. Bomb threats were being reported everywhere. The FBI suspect list topped 50,000 names. 16 years and 16 bombs later, the Unabomber had claimed 3 lives and injured 24 people. 2 months after Murray was brutally killed, a letter arrived at the San Francisco Chronicle. It read, "The terrorist group FC, called Unabomber by the FBI, is planning to blow up an airliner out of Los Angeles International Airport during the next 6 days."
The threat had to be taken absolutely seriously because the Unabomber had in fact placed a bomb aboard an aircraft before. It wasn't lethal enough to blow the plane out of the sky, but we knew that his bomb-making ability had progressed enough that he certainly was capable of that now.
The FBI saw to it that special security measures went into effect immediately at California airports. No one without a ticket was allowed through security. All bags were searched. Bomb-sniffing dogs checked everything. The Postal Service stopped flying the mail on commercial jets.
Passengers are questioned about carry-on luggage that they've had. Have you had this package in your custody and control during the entire time? Did you pack the suitcase yourself? Those type of questions all began from that day in LAX.
The same day that the airliner threat was received at the San Francisco Chronicle, the Washington Post received a message from FC, a 56-page typed manifesto. The New York Times received a carbon copy of the manifesto the next day, as did the adult magazine Penthouse 2 days after that. The letter to the Post and Times laid out the terms and conditions for publication and agreed to stop the bombings if the Post or the Times published. For Special Agent Terry Turchie and the Unabomber Task Force, receiving the manifesto was a huge break.
Of course, when the Unabomber manuscript came in, that was big information, and this was a major break, and we all knew that it was a major break, which if handled properly, could possibly lead us to identify the Unabomber.
The manuscript, blandly titled Industrial Society and Its Consequences, was a meticulously written tract against technology, genetics, leftism, conservatism, and modern society generally. The FBI had many items of evidence collected from years of investigating this case. They needed to generate just one solid lead, one that could hopefully break the case wide open. Freeman thought the answer lay in publishing the manifesto.
We very much were in favor of publishing it because after reading the manifesto, it was clear that someone had put their philosophy that had evolved over a number of years within the pages of this thing. It was recognizable. Somebody in reading this, we hoped, would read it and say, I remember that guy. He was sat next to me in class at such and such a university.
After some public soul-searching and discussions with the director of the FBI and Attorney General Janet Reno, the Washington Post, and the New York Times, the decision was made to publish the manifesto. The manifesto appeared in a special section of the Post on September 19, 1995. By early 1996, Ted Kaczynski's brother David had been doing some soul-searching of his own. The news reports that the Unabomber had connections to Chicago, their boyhood home, as well as to Berkeley and Salt Lake City, nagged at him. He got a copy of the manifesto and began reading. He read it in the hopes of erasing the idea that his brother was a killer. What he read sent chills down his spine. He recognized the language and content of the manifesto as being similar to that of writings by his brother Ted. David dug up as many old letters and writings of Ted's as he could find and compared them to the Unabomber manifesto. Both had employed the unique phrase, cool-headed logician. David was distressed, but not yet convinced. He wrote Ted an urgent letter. Though he did not reveal his suspicions, he requested a visit to Montana. Ted refused his brother's request. David decided to call a private investigator to look into the matter, but the news that the private eye brought him was not encouraging. The private eye submitted the manifesto along with some of Ted's writing to be analyzed by experts who didn't know the parties involved. The experts concluded that the authors had a strong chance of being the same person. Frantically, David continued his search for anything Ted had ever written to him. In an old trunk, he came across the essay Ted had sent him back in 1971. David could no longer hide from the reality that his brother might be the Unabomber. David Kaczynski was stunned. The 1971 essay David had unearthed was eerily similar to the Unabomber manifesto. Torn by the prospect of turning in his own brother on the one hand and endangering lives on the other, David Kaczynski made a gut-wrenching decision. Through his attorney, he contacted the FBI about his brother. In February of 1996, David Kaczynski told task force members of his suspicions. He gave a detailed accounting of Ted's life, where he grew up, where he went to school, and where he now lived. He then turned over the 1971 essay.
And then we were able to do a side-by-side comparison between that document that was prepared many years before to the current copy of the manifesto, and it was very clear to us, many of us in the task force, that the similarities were more than coincidental.
The FBI analyzed the essay and found over 160 examples of similarities with the Unabomber manifesto, including common phrases and misspellings. The list went on and on. After 17 years, the FBI had its first major suspect, Ted Kaczynski. Dozens of FBI agents quietly slipped into the small town of Lincoln, Montana. The FBI kept careful surveillance on Kaczynski's cabin as they laid out the case for a search warrant, hoping that the Unabomber would not strike again in the interim. By the beginning of April, enough information had been uncovered to justify the warrant. Among other things, agents were able to learn that Ted had traveled extensively. Hotel records showed that he was always on the move immediately preceding a Unabomber event. Agent Terry Turchi submitted a meticulous 65-page affidavit outlining the government's case against Ted Kaczynski and requesting permission to search his cabin.
We had been working all morning, since about 5 that morning, to pre-position various agent teams in different locations in the woods in Lincoln, Montana, and at a forward command post that we had established in Lincoln. Everybody had a different role. We had also had the evidence response teams coming in, and they were staging at another command post that we had in Lincoln. So everyone was ready to go once the warrant was signed.
Disguised FBI agents and a forest officer approached Kaczynski's cabin. They walked toward his cabin speaking loudly. They didn't want Kaczynski to suspect there was anybody sneaking up on him. The officers asked him to help identify a property line on their map. As he turned to get his coat, the officers pounced on Kaczynski. The suspected Unabomber was in custody. Kaczynski was immediately taken for questioning to a temporary forward command post. Jim Freeman was about to come face to face with the man that had eluded the FBI for nearly 2 decades.
He looked just absolutely disheveled. He looked like he was covered with soot. The agents that had grabbed his arms to restrain him had soot on their hands.
So, Ted, you like to travel?
Kaczynski admitted nothing and refused to say whether the cabin had any live bombs
How
in
about Helen?
it.
Been down there much?
As the questioning continued, the search of the cabin began. The tiny cabin was treated essentially like a live bomb. It was assumed that the place at the very least had live bombs in it, or at worst, was heavily booby-trapped. Explosive ordnance disposal teams cautiously made their way into the cabin. Ted Kaczynski had not been formally arrested on any charges yet. As investigators searched through his cabin, they found enough evidence to charge him with possession of bomb-making materials. They found pipes, chemicals, wiring, batteries, and wooden boxes. This charge would allow agents to hold Kaczynski until a more thorough search could be conducted. FBI Special Agent and explosive expert Donald Sockleben was responsible for quickly gathering evidence in order to obtain the arrest warrant. He rushed to Helena to petition the judge. Sockleben had been working on the Unabomber case for years.
I think it was on the ride back to Helena that night when Pat Webb and I, who had worked on this for so many years, just sort of looked at each other and realized that maybe this was the beginning of the end. That we really did believe that night, if we hadn't believed before, that we had in fact caught the Unabomber.
Ted Kaczynski was detained overnight until formal arrest charges could be brought the following morning. He was led through the streets on national television, looking every bit the part of an eccentric hermit. He was presented the next day before a judge in Helena on a charge of possession of bomb-making equipment. The search of the cabin continued. The room was a gold mine, but a dangerous one. Each container, each book, each binder needed to be x-rayed for explosive devices. It was clearly going to take a long time to search the tiny cabin. The evidence being slowly hauled out of the cabin was damning. A series of 3-ring binders with page after page of detailed bomb designs which matched the bombs used in many of the Unabomber explosions. Explosive powders of the type used in the bombings. Aluminum ingots and aluminum shavings on the floor, crucial bomb components. There was the infamous hooded sweatshirt and sunglasses. Agent Thomas Monell, the expert on Unabomber devices, was also inside the cabin.
The other evidence located in the cabin were electrical components and wire that were consistent with the majority of the Unabomber devices. We found a improvised or a homemade flip type switch that was literally identical to 3 switches that were used in earlier bombs.
After almost 2 full days, the search came to a sudden stop. A package was found. It was wrapped like previous bombs with a return address on it. All it awaited was a victim's name and address for the front. It was x-rayed and determined to be a live pipe bomb. Special Agent Sockleben had to handle the crisis.
Well, from the x-ray, it looked very similar to the last bomb that had been placed, the one that killed Mr. Murray in Sacramento. We were able to safely remove the box from the cabin and take it down the hill to where we set up a site to deal with the bomb.
The search slowly continued in the days ahead, and more damning evidence was seized. In addition to bomb-making paraphernalia and chemicals, agents also seized letters, notes, diagrams, and the Unabomber manifesto. One irrefutable link between Ted Kaczynski and the Unabomber remained: the typewriter used for the manifesto.
The typewriter that had been used to type the manifesto wasn't found until literally the last day of the search, which took 4 or 5 days. It was literally in the bottom of the last box that was opened.
It had taken 11 days to search an 80-square-foot room, but the FBI's careful approach had paid off. The man who had killed, maimed, and ruined lives, all the while taunting the FBI, was caught stone cold. On April 14th, the entire cabin was hoisted onto a flatbed and hauled away for further examination. The charges against Kaczynski had been upgraded. On June 18, 1996, Ted Kaczynski was indicted in Sacramento on 10 counts relating to Unabomber activities. 1 charge in the death of Hugh Scruton, 3 charges in the wounding of Charles Epstein, 3 charges in the maiming of David Galernter, and 3 charges in the death of Gil Murray. That day would have been Gil Murray's 48th birthday. New Jersey authorities filed more charges for the death of Thomas Moser. On November 12, 1996, selected visitors filed into a Sacramento courtroom for the long-awaited trial of Ted Kaczynski. In the front row was Ted's family, brother David, and his mother, Wanda Kaczynski. As Ted entered the courtroom, he turned his back angrily on his family members and never acknowledged them. Opening statements were about to begin when Kaczynski stood up and said he wanted to change lawyers. After a few days, the judge ruled that Kaczynski would have to undergo psychological testing. Federal prison psychiatrist Dr. Sally Johnson spent many days with Kaczynski. She concluded that Ted Kaczynski was mentally ill, but was competent to stand trial. The government's case against Kaczynski was overwhelming. For 17 years, the FBI had prepared for this day. Examiners had reconstructed and preserved every device related to the Unabomber's crimes. With Ted Kaczynski's arrest, they were now able to establish an irrefutable link between him and the Unabomber. Ted's desire for solitude would no longer be self-imposed. With no options, he pled guilty to all Unabomber-related crimes. He was given 4 life sentences plus 30 years. He would never be eligible for parole. For Agent Terry Turchi, the Unabomber investigation shows the FBI's determination to never quit until justice is served, no matter how long it takes.
For the people committing these crimes, who may go on for many years and not get caught, they may become more arrogant, or they may become more complacent, or they may think we're never going to catch them. But I think for them and for the public, the message has to be that we don't give up and that we're going to stay with it until we solve it. And certainly I think that is what we're called upon to do and what we need to do.
In June 1998, Joanna Lee, an assistant editor at Simon & Schuster Publishing, received a letter from Ted Kaczynski with a prison return address. She knew he was the convicted Unabomber, but opened it anyway. Kaczynski wanted them to publish a book about his struggle. To this date, there are no takers.